Chapter 855. My name is Shuezheng. I've already fainted, so these are the thoughts that crossed my mind before I fainted. The woman who planted the peach tree is terrifyingly strong. I've been careful enough, but she still discovered me and chased me. My main body was suppressed by the peach garden's restriction, and I had no choice but to self-destruct. Then, more than 30 sources of rebirth were destroyed. That's more than half of my wealth. My heart ached so much. But after that, I couldn't care less because there was only one source of rebirth left. If it was destroyed, I would really be done for. Only in the face of death did I discover that I had always believed that I had lived long enough and that I wasn't afraid of death's arrival. However, from head to toe, I was completely wrong. I, Shuezheng, didn't want to die. I wanted to live for another 5 million years. At that time, I swore that if someone could save me, I would remember this favor and do my best to repay him. Then I was saved. The last source of rebirth was activated before my consciousness arrived. This gave me time to take a breather and form a new body. My heart was filled with gratitude, but the eyes of the kid in front of me made me suppress my emotions. His eyes were too strange, and I've seen similar eyes before. So, I decided that before I confirmed his orientation, I definitely couldn't let him know how grateful I was to him. But before I could find a way, the woman who planted the peach tree chased me again. Isn't she tired? Even for her, the exhaustion of crossing worlds consecutively must have caused a great deal of damage, right? I really don't understand. It's just a peach. Why is she so crazy? The new body is in an absolutely weak state. I, Shuezheng, am definitely not her opponent, so I can only choose to escape. The moment I escaped, I hesitated for a moment. Should I bring Qinyu with me? Oh, Qinyu is the kid that saved me. If I bring him to cross worlds, the exhaustion will obviously increase. But if I don't bring him, my intuition told me that it's best to bring him with me. Otherwise, I'll definitely be in big trouble. Reality proved that my shocking intuition was right again. After crossing worlds, I suffered a serious injury. In my coma, my consciousness was half asleep. I thought of many ways to treat it, but I couldn't think of a way to treat it. If I delayed any longer, I would die. I had to force myself to wake up. I became sworn brothers with Qinyu and gave my life to him. To be honest, it wasn't that I really trusted him, but that I was forced by the situation and had no other choice. I could only make a desperate attempt and hope that my intuition could save me one more time. All right, I've finished my thoughts before I fainted. Now, I'm going to pretend to be a corpse. Whatever happens next has nothing to do with me. My name is Qinyu. I'm also injured right now, and I have to carry a dead person on my back as I trudge through the jungle filled with withered vines. I didn't know where the road ahead was, but I still had to walk on it. I had thought of abandoning the guy behind me countless times, but I still held on to him tightly, because I felt that what he said about being brothers for a lifetime was too touching. It must be true. Enk stopped and turned around, revealing a small face that was pale from fear. Even though I already knew that he was a little fledgling, his appearance was indeed quite bewitching. It should be quite difficult for him to find a wife that was more beautiful than him in the future. I can only send you up to here. Don't go astray. Follow this direction, and after passing through the mountain, you'll find a large river. Once you get there, you'll have to choose what you want to do. And Ke glanced at Qinyu and then turned to leave. Wait. Qinyu suddenly spoke up, and Ke was clearly startled. He nervously looked over. What is it? Qinyu said, I believe that I didn't see wrongly. You're clearly afraid and you don't want to cause trouble. So why did you choose to help us in the end? When they first woke up, they found themselves outside this small mountain village. If it wasn't for Nku coming back and dragging the two of them into the straw house, they would have been discovered long ago. Although Qinyu didn't know what happened in the outside world, it was clear that the men in the city that Nku spoke of were likely coming for him and Shuezheng. Nku bit his lips, because I promised my little sister that I would help everyone in the future. If I meet someone that needs help, be careful. He didn't stay any longer and hurried away. Qinyu had a thoughtful look. When he mentioned his little sister, there was a flash of pain in Nku's eyes. It was clear that there was another story behind this. But now wasn't the time to think about these things. He looked in the direction that Nku left in and then quickly carried Shuezheng away. His steps were much more relaxed than before, and his speed was several times faster. Although there wasn't any problem with this village boy, his caution had long been branded into his bones. Chinyu was always on guard. The darkness wasn't anything to him. He soon entered the mountain cave. But as he was rapidly moving forward, Chinyu suddenly stopped. He bitterly smiled. Sure enough, when a person was down on their luck, they would never know what would happen to them. For instance, Chinyu was looking at the tall and sturdy wild wolf in front of him. That pair of oily green eyes flashed with cruelty and greed. Chinyu took a deep breath and suppressed his thoughts. He placed Xue Zheng on the ground and bent down, coldly staring at the wild wolf. During the process of crossing worlds, because he had Xue Zheng's protection, his situation was much better than when he crossed worlds on his own. As long as he quietly recuperated for a period of time, his strength would gradually recover. But the problem now was that it was too early and his cultivation was still in a dormant state. His mortal body had only recovered some basic mobility, and this wild wolf in front of him was clearly not easy to deal with. The wild wolf's eyes flashed with hesitation, as if it could smell something extremely dangerous coming from Chinyu's body. But in the next moment, this cunning beast turned into a shadow and pounced forwards, opening its jaws and biting towards Chinyu's throat. Luckily, Chinyu didn't relax at all from start to finish. The moment the wild wolf lunged at him, he rolled to the side to avoid its bite and kicked out. With a mournful cry, the wild wolf was sent flying away. Chinyu's forehead was covered with beads of sweat. After his weakened body erupted, he had nearly reached the limit of what he could withstand. The wild wolf also discovered this. It paused for a moment before rushing forwards again. It clearly possessed a high level of intelligence. It no longer tried to quickly kill its prey, but instead chose to wander around and fight. It wanted to exhaust Chinyu's remaining strength so that he would eventually become its food. Chinyu grit his teeth. He didn't want to die in such a pathetic manner. With a deep roar, he threw himself forwards. After a while, the wild wolf, who had a lame leg and was covered in wounds, let out a low growl and turned around to flee. It was truly a bit afraid. This two-legged sheep had actually forced it to be even more savage. It had bitten him just now, but its neck had almost been broken instead. Chinyu's body was covered in wounds. After losing his blood vitality, his mortal body was weaker than an ordinary person's. But his eyes became increasingly cold. He stared at the retreating wild wolf and chased after it without hesitation. This was because he knew that creatures like wolves lived in packs. If he let this one go, he feared another pack would soon follow. At that time, he and Xue Zheng would really die a graveless death. In the darkness, there was a fierce battle. After a long time, it gradually calmed down. Chinyu gasped for breath as he leaned against a rock behind him. He held the still warm corpse of the wolf in his arms. The wound on its neck was still gushing out blood. After a while, Chinyu wiped the wolf blood from the corners of his lips and staggered over to Xue Zheng's side. He carried him on his back and continued forwards. But after this torment, he had wasted far too much time. In addition, Chinyu's physical condition had worsened. Even as the sky began to brighten, Chinyu still hadn't left the cave. He couldn't hold on any longer. He tossed Xue Zheng to the ground and sat down, gasping for breath, sweat dripping down his body. He felt that he had a grudge against crossing worlds. Every time he crossed, he would suffer. As his thoughts raced, Chinyu's complexion suddenly changed. He turned and looked behind him. Rustling sounds constantly entered his ears. Some people were approaching, and there were many of them. Chinyu's first thought was that Brad Encore had betrayed them. But thinking about it, if he really wanted to do this, there was no need to go through so much trouble. Pulling Xue Zheng up, Chinyu quickly rushed forwards. But even though he had recovered a little of his strength, it wasn't long before he used up most of it. If things continued like this, they would catch up to him sooner or later. What should he do? Suddenly, the faint smell of blood wafted over. Chinyu's complexion changed. He clenched his teeth and raced towards the source of the smell. This was a battle that had occurred in the forest. Looking at the aftermath of the battle, there were cultivators involved, and they weren't weak at all. Currently, there were a massive number of corpses strewn all over the ground. From their clothes, one side had been completely annihilated, and the other side's corpses had been dragged away. There was no time to observe any further. Qin thought to himself that it was all up to fate. He casually smeared some blood on Shui Zhang and himself, tossed him aside, and dove into the pile of corpses. Soon, the sound of dense footsteps approached, followed by cries of alarm in his ears. "It's people from Cat Mountain. Fuck, those bastards are too ruthless. They didn't even let a single one off. Hurry up and take a look. Is there anyone else alive? It shouldn't be. Those opiums wouldn't show any mercy." Just as he finished speaking, he heard a shout. "There's someone alive." Qin Yu cursed inwardly. Shui Zhang's luck was truly bad. He had been found so quickly. He was secretly worried. And sure enough, after a while, the corpses on top of him were moved away, and Qin Yu was also found. There are actually 2 survivors. Their lives are quite tough. The person hugging Qin Yu shouted out loud. A thick arm clamped down on him. Qin Yu felt that if he didn't wake up soon, he would likely suffocate to death. So, with a cough, he slowly woke up. "Hey, you're awake." The ruddy-faced man slapped down. "Brat, hurry up and tell us, who did you meet?" Qin Yu had just raised his breath, but when he turned his head, he was slapped away. He could only force a smile, close his eyes, and fall unconscious. His last thought was that he, a dignified member of the ancient clan, an existence that had fused with the Jade embryo egg, had been slapped unconscious. This was definitely a dark history that would accompany him for the rest of his life. But Qin Yu would never have thought that this moment was just the beginning of the darkest moment of his life. When Qin Yu woke up again, he had already been carried to the 9 Serene Peak. After spending some time to explore the surrounding environment, Qin Yu thought that it was a waste for a group of disorderly bandits to dare to use such an imposing name. It seemed he didn't have much interest in the 2 fellows of the Cat Mountain. For several days, Qin Yu quietly healed his wounds. However, Shui Zhang wasn't here. According to the guard, Shui Zhang's wounds were serious, so he was taken away by the divine doctor of the mountain to be treated. This made Qin Yu suspicious, but he couldn't help but feel a deep respect. He thought, could it be a divine doctor who had hidden himself from the world? This was a wounded original God Realm expert. If he could be cured, wouldn't he have a guarantee of his safety? It was a good result. After half a month, Qin Yu slowly opened his eyes. Light flashed in his eyes. He exhaled, revealing a smile. Finally, he had recovered a little bit of his competence. At this rate, he would need at most half a year to restore his peak condition. Qin Yu heard some noises outside. He turned around and lay down, pretending that he had just woken up. Then he saw Shui Zhang, his face pale, being carried by some people. Qin Yu was startled. He hurried to get up. What happened? He and Shui Zhang were brothers. If things went wrong, they would die together. How could he become like this after just half a month? Although he wasn't dead yet, he only had one last breath left. The old man in the gray robe, following behind a crowd, felt embarrassed. He coughed, his face compassionate. "I heard that you 2 are sworn brothers. Junior, you're quite loyal. It's a pity that your elder brother's injuries are too severe. I've tried my best to save his life, but in the end, it was all for naught. He doesn't have much time left. Just treat it as seeing him for the last time." Qin Yu looked up. "May I ask who this is?" The 9 Nether Peak bandit that had been taking care of him these days said, "Qin Yu, this is our mountain's godly Dr. Yi. He is a man of great ability. Your sworn brother." "Ha, what a pity." Qin Yu took a deep breath, suppressing his emotions. "Godly Dr. Yi, are you sure you have investigated my big brother's injuries?" The gray-robed man's face stiffened. He immediately flicked his sleeves. "Since I have taken action, I naturally know everything. Junior, you are too presumptuous. Well, it's fine. I can see that you're grieving too much, so it shouldn't be from your heart. I won't pursue this matter any further." He turned and left. His loose gray robe fluttered in the wind, giving him the demeanor of an immortal. The mountain bandit that was taking care of Qin Yu pointed at him. "You brat, how dare you disrespect godly Dr. Yi? You will suffer in the future." Qin Yu was expressionless. Disregarding everything else, there was at least one thing he was sure of. This godly doctor Yi wasn't reliable. Looking at Shuizheng, who had gone through countless torments, Qin Yu suddenly felt that it was fortunate that the vitality of a God Realm martial artist was vigorous. Even in a severely wounded state, he was still incomparably strong. Otherwise, he would have already died. But the problem now was whether or not Shuizheng could recover. If he died like this, wouldn't that be too unjust? Chapter 856. Shuizheng was worthy of his mighty original God Realm cultivation base. Although he had half a breath left, he was still able to survive. However, his pale face hadn't recovered yet. He looked like a dead body lying on the ground, motionless. Qin Yu exhaled in relief. At the same time, he couldn't help but worry. It seemed Shuizheng's situation was really critical. He needed to restore his power and think of a way to save his life. However, he didn't know how to do it. The only thing Shi Yan could confirm was that he should never approach the godly doctor with the surname Yi in the 9 Serene Peak. That man was too dangerous. If he knew that Shi Yan had almost killed an original God Realm expert, what would he think? The 9 Serene Peak was steep and steep. The area of the peak wasn't small. After being excavated, they had built some low buildings. In a yard not far from Qin Yu, godly Dr. Yi was sitting under a tree, boiling tea. He sneezed several times. Looking at the good tea in his hand, he begrudgingly said, "This kid's resentment isn't small." Then, he lifted his head to look at Qin Yu. He seemed to be able to feel his current thoughts. Several steps away from him, a figure was standing with her back facing him. Her pink floral dress was tightly wrapped around her muscular body. She was a warm girl, but now, she gave people only a wild feeling. It seemed like her dress would be torn into pieces in the next moment, and a super Tyrannosaurus would jump out of it. "Teacher Yi, why did you help him? You've consumed a lot of energy this time. It will make you feel weak for a long time." Her clear and cold voice came from her mouth. It was like the cold autumn rain falling on people's faces. It made people shiver instinctively and sober up. Miracle Dr. Yi poured away the tea and took a new teacup. He thought for a moment and said, "This person met me when he was on the verge of death. This means that he is not fated to die. This is the direction of fate. As a benevolent doctor, my conscience won't allow me to stand by and watch." "Teacher Yi, do you think I'll believe you?" "No, I won't." Sipping the tea in his cup, godly Dr. Yi grinned. "Anyway, I need to observe him for a while. After I'm sure, I will decide whether to tell you or not." "Teacher Yi, do you know that your habit of leaving people hanging is really annoying?" "I know, but so what? I am me. I want to be a different kind of firework." The muscular body was silent for a moment before he slowly said, "But now, Master Yi, you are only a consciousness avatar. If I get angry, you will definitely feel very uncomfortable." Miracle Dr. Ye's face stiffened. He pursed his lips and squeezed out a smile. "Miss, I don't think you're the kind of person who would bite the hand that feeds you. You're wrong." His muscular body turned around, revealing a large, rough, and ferocious-looking face. His discordant eye sockets were embedded with a pair of quick-witted eyes. He looked over eagerly, full of malice. Miracle Dr. Yi quivered, and his teacup almost fell to the ground. He spoke in astonishing speed. "Miss, please wait. I'll talk." A hint of disappointment flashed across his eyes, and the corners of his lips curled upwards. With a hint of indignation in his voice, he said, "Fine. However, Yi sure, you know me very well. If you dare to lie to me, even if I can't make sense of it right now, there will come a day when I will settle the score with you. So if you want to speak the truth. This is my kind reminder to you." Miracle Dr. Yi obviously froze for a moment. It was obvious that this sentence had hit a sore spot. His eyes rolled a few times. "Miss, you know the competitor this time. Not only is he very strong, he has also occupied an advantageous position. If we want to achieve our goal, it will be very difficult. If we can save this person and borrow his strength, things will be much easier." Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted. The muscular body smiled and said, "Master Yi, Are you sure you don't have any other aspects that you need to elaborate on? Miracle Dr. Yi persisted for 3 seconds before decisively admitting defeat. All right, I'll tell you the truth. Miss, I think that Junior Chinyu is a good choice. In any case, you're already of age and will have to choose a man sooner or later. How about you try him first? Bang, the courtyard walls collapsed. Lying in a mess, Miracle Dr. Yi spat out several mouthfuls of spittle. He muttered, I knew this would be the result, so I didn't dare to say it. The muscular body's complexion stiffened. He changed the topic and said, It looks like this fellow has hidden himself quite deeply. He was actually able to make Teacher Yi have such thoughts. Miracle Doctor Yi waved his hand to drive away the people approaching him. He switched to a more comfortable position and proudly said, Of course, I've always believed that besides my medical skills, I am also a formidable prophet. I've already repeated this many times. It's just that none of you believe me. The muscular body coldly snorted. Since you think so highly of Chinyu, then let's give him this mission. I want to see whether or not he can return alive. A month later, Chinyu let out a deep breath. As he felt the magic power revolving within his body, a happy expression lit up his face. After this period of rest, his injuries had finally recovered. Although he was still far from being completely healed, he at least had the strength to protect himself. He looked up at the center of 9 Serene Peak through the window. There was a large courtyard there that was incomparably quiet, no different from the surrounding buildings. But after waking up, Chinyu had always felt a faint pressure. It was only today that he found the source. As he looked down, even with Chinyu's mental fortitude, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He quickly looked away, a look of shock on his face. That seemingly ordinary courtyard had invisible black ripples surging in the surrounding space. Each ripple contained a terrifying power that could destroy everything. It was just that it was unknown what method was used, but these black fluctuations had fused together with space, not causing any damage to anything within range. But Chinyu was sure that if anyone tried to force their way in and reveal any hostility, they would be instantly torn to pieces by these black fluctuations, even if it was him who had recovered his cultivation. Just what sort of world was this? How could there be such a terrifying expert in a mere bandit camp? If this was really the case, then this world was far too dangerous. As Chinyu's thoughts raced, he heard the sound of footsteps. His thoughts stirred and his face paled, revealing a bit of weakness and weakness. With a creak, the door was pushed open and a familiar bandit walked in. Chinyu, hurry up and follow me. The Stronghold Master wants to see you. Okay, let's go. Chinyu stood up and followed behind. He hurriedly walked out. Although he seemed calm on the surface, his heart was filled with apprehension. As he thought, the direction they were going in was the courtyard he had been looking at just now. Chinyu's forehead was instantly covered with a cold sweat. But with things having come to this point, it was no longer up to him to choose. He could only grit his teeth and follow behind, taking things one step at a time. Stronghold Master, Chinyu has arrived. The bandit respectfully bowed. When a common sound came from inside, he turned and shouted, Hurry up and go in. You must be respectful to the Stronghold Master and do not seek death. As he spoke, he had a respectful and fearful expression as he turned and left. Chinyu could faintly feel the black fluctuations tumbling in front of him, emitting faint traces of its aura. He couldn't help but tense up. It was too terrifying. The closer he was, the more he could clearly feel the terrifying might contained within. If it really erupted and he was sucked in, he feared he would instantly be torn to pieces, his body and soul destroyed. Suddenly, Chinyu felt 2 pairs of eyes looking at him, filled with surprise. He didn't dare to hesitate any longer and directly stepped into the range of the black fluctuations. Like a small boat sailing through a raging sea, there was the danger of destruction at every moment. Chinyu pushed open the courtyard doors and entered, trying his best to appear calm. There were 2 people sitting in the courtyard, but in Chinyu's eyes, they were like 2 giant black holes. The surrounding space was violently distorted by their auras, and even light that fell on their bodies would be swallowed up. There was no way to escape. and one of them was the divine Dr. Yi he had seen before, and the other should be the Nine Nether Peaks stronghold master. But what was strange was that although the two of them gave Qin Yu the feeling of being human-shaped black holes, the stronghold master's aura didn't seem as formidable as divine Dr. Yi's. Qin Yu didn't think too much about it. After all, regardless of how strong or weak these two people were, it would be easy for them to kill him. Humph! Rude brat, we meet again. Divine Dr. Yi humphed, his eyes constantly looking up and down as if he wanted to see through all the secrets Qin Yu was hiding. This gaze made Qin Yu feel as if he were facing a predator. All the hairs on his back stood up, and his mind instinctively trembled. The two terrifying existences in front of him didn't seem to have any intentions of making things difficult for him. Qin Yu felt a little more at ease. He tried his best to express his guilt and bowed. Divine Dr. Yi, I was the one who offended you before. I ask that you don't take offense. Hee, if you say you don't take offense, then you don't take offense. But this old man has been in a good mood recently. I originally wanted you to suffer a bit, but now I will give you a chance to earn my forgiveness. Divine Dr. Yi chuckled several times. He continued to say, there is something in the great king city that I need you to help me obtain. If you can accomplish this, then everything will be written off and I will even give you some benefits. But if you fail, humph, then you can only pray for the best. Without giving Qin Yu a chance to choose, Divine Dr. Yi waved his hand. All right, go. Someone is already waiting outside. She will tell you the specifics. As for your brother, you can rest assured that I will order people to take good care of him. As for the creditor, he hadn't said a single word from beginning to end. Qin Yu stiffened. He bitterly nodded and turned to leave the courtyard. With Divine Dr. Yi's strength, he actually couldn't easily obtain something. If he tried, wouldn't he have a 90% chance of dying? Moreover, this person had specifically pointed out that Shuezhang should stay behind. He likely already knew of their brotherhood of life and death and wasn't afraid of him playing any tricks. As he stepped out of the range of the black fluctuations, an icy woman's voice sounded out. You are Qin Yu? Come with me. Qin Yu looked up and saw the woman's back. Proud and aloof, she gave off a feeling like an unsheathed sword that would cut apart the heavens in the next moment. Chapter 857. What Qin Yu didn't expect was that before entering the Grand King City, he would need to learn another skill. The proud and aloof woman standing in front of him called herself the Maid of the Stronghold Master. But she had a cold and aloof appearance, like a lotus on a snowy mountain. It was hard to see how a maid should act. I will only say what I'm about to say once. You can choose not to listen, but if you lose your life because of this, it will be your own fault. The maid Xiao Zhao's eyes were cold, and her tone was like the cold autumn wind, cold and without the least bit of emotion. Qin Yu nodded. Miss, please speak. Xiao Zhao said, this world is divided into two by the back of mountain gaze. One is ruled by humanity, and the other is ruled by the race of Obum. As for the territory you and I are in and the Grand King City, that is the sphere of influence of Obum. So, in order to complete the mission, you need to learn the flesh metamorphosis technique and enter the city as Obum. Xiao Zhao glanced at Qin Yu, and her eyes turned even colder. Because here, humans are Obum's slaves and food. Qin Yu wasn't in the mood to understand the icy cold pain in her eyes. At this time, his heart shrank. His first thought was that he had been exposed. But thinking about it, since the stronghold master of Nine Nether Peak and godly Dr. Yi were such terrifying existences, they likely already knew of Shui Zheng's background. If so, then it was reasonable for him to be discovered. Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed his tumbling thoughts. He nodded and said, all right, then I'll have to trouble miss. Xiao Zhao sneered. Do you think the flesh metamorphosis technique is simple? If it were, then there wouldn't be a massive number of humans wailing in agony as they are cooked and served to Obum's table. She lifted a hand and took out a translucent jade slip. Everything related to the body metamorphosis technique is inside. Take a look first and ask me if there's anything you don't understand. As she spoke, she walked to the side, crossed her arms, and closed her eyes as if she were resting her mind. Qin didn't care about her attitude. His thoughts stirred, and he probed the jade slip with his divine sense. Soon, he looked over the entire body metamorphosis technique. He laid down the jade slip and thought for a moment. Then, he opened his eyes in surprise. It was actually this simple. That's right. Xiao Zhao had reminded him with a sneer. This extraordinary body metamorphosis technique was simply child's play to Qin Yu. He only looked through it once and mentally deliberated it once, but he discovered that there were no more omissions. He had already completely grasped it. He looked up at Xiao Zhao, who was resting with her eyes closed and had an unapproachable aura around her. Qin Yu coughed and said, "I'm fine." Shua. Xiao Zhao opened her eyes. She frowned, a much colder look in her eyes. Qin Yu, I hope that you can remember that this does not only involve your life or death, but also the mission that the Stronghold Master has given you. There cannot be any accidents. Qin Yu nodded. I know. Looking at his calm appearance, Xiao Zhao sneered several times in her heart. She really couldn't understand why the Stronghold Master would allow Qin Yu to interfere in this mission that he could clearly complete himself. He was obviously an idiot who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. The flesh transformation technique was an exquisite technique created by a certain human almighty being who could not bear to see his compatriots in the occupied areas end up as food for the Obums. After studying it for countless years, he finally created it. As long as he successfully cultivated it, he would be able to complete the transformation, and it would be difficult for him to be detected even if he blended into the real Obums. Unfortunately, cultivating the flesh transformation technique had extremely high requirements for the cultivator. Often, only 1 out of 1,000 people would be able to succeed, and it also required a massive amount of time. As for Qin Yu, his origins were mysterious, and he clearly didn't understand the flesh transformation technique. Yet he had managed to successfully cultivate it in just a moment. This was impossible. Humph. It was likely that this person was brought here by the mist from her home. He had high standards, but little ability. She would mercilessly mock him and then think of a way to change the mist's mind and make this idiot stay in Nine Nether Peak. Otherwise, he would only become a burden to her. All right, since you've successfully cultivated it, then display it. I'm looking forward to it. Xiao Zhao expressionlessly said. Qin Yu said, all right. He took a step back. With a thought, he felt as if all the bones in his body had been pulled out, and he slumped to the ground like a pile of soft mud. Then, this pile of soft mud seemed to be pulled up by a pair of invisible hands. When it finally calmed down, it had turned into an ordinary Obum that was 2 feet tall and had gray fur. Xiao Zhao's eyes widened. She could no longer maintain the indifference on her face. At this time, her heart was filled with shock. This was impossible. This was absolutely impossible. Miss Xiao Zhao, how is it? Qin Yu's question entered her ears, and she immediately regained her composure. Her eyes became even colder and filled with loathing. Did you successfully cultivate the flesh transformation art before? Qin Yu shook his head. No, humph. There is no need to explain. I will report this matter to the miss. If you dare to have any thoughts that you shouldn't have, then forget it as soon as possible. He turned and walked away. Xiao Zhao's eyes were filled with loathing. What she hated the most were these kinds of people that deliberately put on an act. Could it be that the person that the miss said she would find a match partner for her was Qin Yu? No, she absolutely could not agree to this. No matter what, she had to make the miss retract her orders. If she, Xiao Zhao, had to marry a true powerhouse in this life, she simply wouldn't place someone like Qin Yu in her eyes. We will go down the mountain tomorrow. You should prepare early. Before her voice fell, Xiao Zhao turned and vanished from sight. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. He didn't understand where her hostility came from. If she was in this state, it would clearly be detrimental to completing the mission. But things had already been decided. He didn't believe that he had the qualifications to bargain with the Stronghold Master or Divine Dr. Yi. He could only sigh inwardly and act according to the circumstances. Great King City. The mysterious powerhouse that had smashed through the barrier of the world and fallen into Little Fragrant Mountain had yet to be found. As time passed, The opium masters that rushed over all returned empty-handed. Pa! With a loud crack of a whip, a human youth that was pulling a carriage had his clothes torn apart, revealing a purple blood mark. Half of his back swelled up, and he fell to the ground with a miserable scream. Around the city gates, there was a large, empty space. Several slaves shivered as they lay on the ground, trying their best not to make a single sound. Riding atop a camel beast, the white-furred opium had a cruel and loathing look in his eyes. A lowly slave actually dares to block my way. He was clearly in a foul mood. After a single whip, his hatred wasn't appeased. He lashed out several more times, causing the human youth to tumble around again and again. The youth's luck was simply too bad. He crashed into a nearby cart that was transporting filth, causing a strange smell to fill the air. The youth's face paled, as if he expected his tragic fate. As he thought, the white opium's face twisted. He diabolically grinned and patted the camel beast beneath him. "This is the lunch I bestowed upon you. Now you can enjoy it." Kacha! The miserable screams came to an abrupt end. With the sound of chewing, blood splashed out. The camel beast emitted an excited roar as it tore at the corpse on the ground. The white opium laughed. He threw down a silver coin to compensate the slave master and then led his subordinates away. Soon, the human slaves responsible for cleaning the streets rushed over with buckets of water. They skillfully washed away the blood on the ground. It was clear they had done this many times before. Chinyu, who had used a transformation technique to transform into opium, coldly looked at all of this. Although his expression didn't change, his heart was shaking. In his previous life, in all of his experiences, humans had always been the masters of the world. He never imagined that there would be a time when humans would recognize other beings as slaves or even food. Although Chinyu already knew about this, it still left an extremely strong psychological impact on Chinyu after witnessing it for himself. Fortunately, his experiences over the years had forged a sufficiently valiant mind. Although his heart was shaken, he maintained an indifferent expression on the surface. Just like the opiums around him, he had a cold and indifferent expression. An opium beside him said in a low voice, "Let's go." He turned and walked towards the city gates. After paying the entrance fee, the two gray-bodied, low-level opiums smoothly arrived at a large inn in the capital city. As if they had been prepared beforehand, they were directly brought to the backyard. There were already over a dozen low-level opiums waiting there. "Stay here obediently. Lord Steward will be here soon." The opium guard leading the way sneered and stood to the side. Soon, an opium with a pale body and only a few gray patterns wrapped around the edges of its hooves walked in amidst the crowd. It wore a well-tailored white formal attire, and its movements were calm and elegant. Its eyes lightly swept over the crowd as it said, "You are very lucky to have obtained the opportunity to enter the city lord's mansion to serve. Although it is the lowest job, it is still the greatest glory of your lives. But remember, the people living in the city lord's mansion are the most noble lords. If you cause any trouble, you will be punished severely." It waved its front hooves. "All right, after verifying their identities, send them away. Don't delay the use of the lords." The opium guard had a fawning expression. "Yes, Lord Steward. Please rest assured." Its long nose was nearly touching the ground. After the steward left, it stood up and sneered arrogantly. "Did you all hear that? If you don't want to die, then work hard." With a wave of its hand, several opiums immediately came in with a white stone. "In a while, place your dirty hooves on the testing stone. Remember, you must be gentle. These testing stones are far more precious than you can imagine. If even a tiny bit of it is damaged, it is not something you can compensate for." Chinyu swept his gaze over the group of guards and frowned inwardly. After entering the city, he had been observing these opiums. They didn't seem to be very strong. Could it be that he had yet to meet a true opium powerhouse? Chapter 858. Obam Darafi was extremely satisfied with his current life. He wore an exquisite and luxurious butler robe, and his daily necessities were all of high quality. When he patrolled the city lord's mansion, Almost all the servants looked at him with reverence and respect. In essence, he was just a lowly gray race. He belonged to the lowest rank among the Obums, just like the Obums in front of him. It was all because of the noble, beautiful, and great city lord that Darafi was able to complete his counterattack, achieve the sublimation of his life, and obtain the position he had in the city lord's mansion. It was the city lord's generosity and kindness that granted him everything he had today. Therefore, be it in his heart or in front of others, Darafi had never hidden that he was the most loyal hound at the feet of the city lord. He would never allow anything that would harm the interests and safety of the city lord. I don't care where you come from or what kind of background you once had, but you have to remember that from today onwards, your only identity is the lowliest servant of the noble and great city master Sophia. Darafi roared in a deep voice. I don't care where you come from or what kind of background you once had, but you have to remember that from today onwards, your only identity is the lowliest servant of the noble and great city master Sophia. If I find out that any of you dare to be disloyal to the city lord, or do anything that harms the city lord's dignity and interests, I swear that you will regret being born into this world. After roaring, Darafi waved his hand. Take this group of filthy fellows to wash their bodies and change into the clothes of a lowly servant. Tell them what they should do, as well as the range of their activities. Yes, esteemed Sir Butler. A female, Obum, with slightly white fur smiled and responded respectfully. She had a pair of long and slender eyes, which was a symbol of extreme beauty among the Obum's race. Furthermore, her slightly white fur indicated that her bloodline was mixed with a faint trace of the bloodline that belonged to a high-level Obum. Darafi's heart warmed as he recalled the beautiful memories of pressing her under his body. However, he maintained a stern expression on the surface and did not express anything. He nodded and turned to walk out. He knew very well that he had obtained everything he had today because of great luck. Who knew how many Obums were envious and jealous of him? They were constantly thinking of replacing him. Therefore, in his daily work, he would never make any mistakes, and he would not give anyone a chance to attack him. Well, when it was time to rest at night, he would find a reasonable excuse to call Ka-Su to his room. It had been a long time since he had wanted to use this beauty to his heart's content. He was really looking forward to it. The Obum that Chinyu had transformed into had his head shrunk. He was no different from the other Obums around him. His face was filled with fear and reverence, but he kept sweeping his surroundings out of the corner of his eye. Suddenly, he was slightly startled. His peripheral vision paused for a moment, and he felt the attention of someone beside him. Xiao Zhao snorted and withdrew her gaze. She was a bit surprised by Qin Yu's vigilance. Although she loathed this person, since she couldn't get rid of him, it was best to tell him the details of the mission so that he wouldn't stir up trouble. Qin Yu, our goal in infiltrating the City Lord Mansion this time is this steward, Darafi. You don't have to worry about anything else. As long as you hide yourself, I'll act on my own. Got it? Through some secret methods, a cold voice directly sounded in Qin Yu's mind. He paused for a moment, then nodded slightly. Although he was dissatisfied with some of this woman's actions, Qin Yu didn't mind if he could sit back and enjoy the fruits of her labor. You bunch of filthy, lowly servants with a strange smell. Hurry up and follow me to the washing area. Wash away all the filth you brought in from outside. Don't taint the residence of the noble and great city lord. Now, everyone follow me. An Obum growled as he pushed his way forward. Qin Yu quickly sensed a trace of unnaturalness from Xiao Zhao. This was because the city lord manners, Opums clearly did not care about low-level Opums like them. The place they had arranged for them to bathe was actually a very large pool. Both the male and female Obum were chased inside. All of them were naked from head to toe. Not a single bit of cover could be seen. A female Obum subconsciously grabbed onto her clothes, a look of hesitation on her face. However, what awaited her was a ruthless whip. The cold laughter of the City Lord mansions. What's so good about your filthy body? Hurry up and go in. If they don't want you, then leave. Trembling, the female Obum took off her clothes and jumped into the steaming pool. At the same time, there were splashing sounds as she fell into the water. Xiao Zhao gritted her teeth, raised her hand, and tore off her clothes. She closed her eyes and jumped into the water. Her body was trembling slightly. Fortunately, in the current environment, she didn't attract the attention of the surrounding obums. Ha! Another group of newcomers. I wonder if they can adapt to life in the City Lord Mansion. Laughing loudly, a group of obums with gray and white fur walked over. Their burning gazes swept across the surface of the water from time to time, looking at the bodies of the female obums. Respected and powerful Lord Guards, I wonder if these lowly and despicable servants have the honor of receiving your training. After all, this is an extremely precious opportunity for them. They can better adapt to the work in the City Lord Mansion. The Obom leader standing outside the pool had a flattering expression. Oh, I see. Brothers, if you aren't too tired after your shifts, why don't you help these little girls? After all, we are all kind-hearted people. How about it? Ha, of course. After standing for an entire day, we could take a hot bath. We can also let the little girls scrub our backs. Let's go. I'm exhausted. I could take a break. Laughing loudly, a group of Obom guards with obviously strong bodies took off their clothes and jumped into the pool. Their fierce eyes swept across the surroundings. All males, scram to the other side of the pool. You're not allowed to take even half a step. Whoosh! Amidst the tumbling sounds of the water, the gray, low-level male obums desperately ran to the edge of the pool. Although they were still superior to the human slaves, they were the lowest existences in the entire race. They had no status at all, even though they knew what was going to happen next. Even though there were their friends, relatives, and even wives among the female obums opposite them, they did not dare to resist at all. Come on, brothers. Let us teach them a good lesson. Amidst their strange laughter, the obum guards pounced forward one by one. The female obums immediately screamed. Occasionally, there would be sounds of resistance, but usually, after a loud slap, there would only be soft sobbing sounds left. The sound of a male taking over a female filled everyone's ears. Xiao Zhao was completely flustered. Although her strength was enough to easily kill all the guards of Obum, with the young lady's grace, she would still be exposed if she did that. Not only would she face danger, but the mission that the Miss had given her would also fail because of this. But if she did nothing, she swept her gaze across the surroundings. At the Obum guards who were crazily in heat, a chill rose from the bottom of her heart, making her feel as if she had fallen into an ice cave. The Obum race had an extremely strong reproductive ability. In response, they were passionate about the most intimate movements between males and females. Even if she hid at the very edge, as long as she stayed in the pool, she would definitely be caught. What should I do? Just as Xiao Zhao was becoming more and more flustered, she suddenly felt someone grab her. A sudden burst of strength pulled her into the water. Don't resist. It's me. Qin Yu's voice sounded in her ear. His expression was somewhat ugly. Originally, after witnessing Xiao Zhao's strength, her cold appearance, and her confident attitude, Qin Yu had thought that she was a powerhouse, the kind that could complete missions on her own. But now, he suddenly understood that this girl was a complete weakling. It had nothing to do with her cultivation or strength, but rather her mentality. Just now, if Qin Yu hadn't spoken up a step faster, Xiao Zhao's resistance would have already erupted. At that time, the two humans who had sneaked in would have been exposed before they could even begin their mission. Even an idiot would know that their fates would have been extremely miserable. You let go. Xiao Zhao roared in a low voice. Although she had the body of an obum, after using the flesh transformation technique, she was still extremely embarrassed to be grabbed by Qin Yu naked like this. In particular, the way Qin Yu had looked at her just now, this hateful fellow, he actually dared to look down on her. Qin Yu coldly snorted in his heart. He released his hand and pointed downwards. That is the hot water outlet. It's hidden deep at the bottom of the pool. The temperature inside is very high, and with your cultivation, it should be easy for you to resist. After speaking, he turned and left, quietly cutting through the pool water and diving to the other side. After several breaths of time, Qin Yu's head popped up, together with the other obums around him. Their eyes widened as they looked at what was happening across the pool. Their breathing was heavy, and their eyes were filled with the same envy and burning passion. Xiao Zhao had been paying attention to Qin Yu from beneath the pool. When she saw his current performance, she was startled and immediately felt ashamed. Her current performance was far inferior to the Qin Yu she had always looked down upon. No, perhaps this was his true nature. He was actually interested in a group of obums. He was simply a freak. Yes, that must be it. Xiao Zhao's thoughts raced. She slid her limbs down to the bottom of the pool. Only when she reached the shockingly hot water outlet did she quietly relax. But even so, as she felt the intensely fluctuating pool water and thought about what was happening above, her beating heart could not calm down. On the surface of the pool, Qin Yu vaguely glanced at where Xiao Zhao was. When he did not sense any energy fluctuations, he let out a sigh of relief. He was truly worried that this girl would be so idiotic as to release her power and completely resist the temperature of the hot water outlet. Hey, have you ever tasted the opposite sex? An obum beside him suddenly spoke. His face was flushed red, and the fire in his eyes seemed to be boiling. Seeing that Qin Yu was stunned for a moment and didn't reply, the obum sneered with a look of disdain. You're actually a fledgling. Wait until you taste the wonders of the opposite sex in the future. Then you'll know how enviable this scene is. As for me, Obam Dota, with astonishing potential, I'll definitely awaken the dormant power in my bloodline in the future and become a powerful city guard. When that time comes, I'll be able to have everything you see. After saying that, as if it was beneath him to continue talking to Qin Yu, this obum turned around and conversed softly with a few obums who seemed to be rather experienced. His eyes constantly swept across the other side, trying to see more clearly through the fog. Qin Yu secretly smiled bitterly. This race of obums looked similar to a creature called pig in the world he came from. Therefore, no matter how well he disguised himself, he still could not muster the slightest bit of interest. With no one to disturb him, he was happy to have some peace. All he wanted was to quickly end this farce before him. Unfortunately, Qin Yu had underestimated the powerful combat power of the obums guarding the pool. After a full 6 hours, they finally washed their bodies and left one after another, unsatisfied. Meanwhile, most of the female obums in the pool had already gone limp. All right, you bunch of lowly things. Hurry up and wash your bodies and put on your clothes. Don't even think of slacking off. As the obums roared, Qin Yu mixed in with them and climbed ashore. He casually wiped his body and put on a robe on the wooden table. With a few glances, he found Xiao Zhao, who had mixed in with the female obums. She wasn't really stupid. She pretended to be weak and powerless, but her actions of putting on her clothes still seemed a little rushed. As expected, she was a weakling. She was merely an illusion. So what if she was naked? In the cruel world of cultivation, paying too much attention to trifling matters would only bring harm to her sooner or later. Now, Qin Yu no longer held any hope that Xiao Zhao could complete the mission alone. As expected, he still had to rely on himself in the end. After the new low-grade obums in the city lord's mansion were distributed, they were sent to different departments such as the kitchen, gardening, and cleaning. Qin Yu and Xiao Zhao each went to the kitchen and cleaning department. Qin Yu's eyes flickered slightly as he watched her leave with an obum. He hoped that she would be smart and not lose her life. Otherwise, Qin Yu wasn't sure if he would be implicated. The few of you, follow me. Qin Yu smoothly entered the kitchen. He was a taciturn newcomer, so he naturally took over the most tiring job, chopping firewood. The obums were a strange race that viewed eating as an art in life. They would spend a large amount of time in their lives enjoying all kinds of delicacies. Thus, the kitchen held a very important position in the city lord's mansion. Naturally, the number of low-level obums similar to Qin Yu's avatars also increased. There isn't enough black firewood. We're going to use it soon. Hurry up and chop. The fat and bloated Obum growled beside him. Chinyu nodded and his hands moved much faster. The gazes that were faintly observing him immediately revealed looks of contempt and contempt. The Obum race possessed a high-level innate talent of being strong to the weak and afraid of the strong. Chinyu's current performance had already placed him in the ranks of weaklings that they could treat as they pleased. 3 days later, Chinyu had already become the busiest person in the kitchen area. There was no one else like him. He was almost doing the work of 3 people. The firewood around him was piled high, and he was completely submerged. Ignoring the proud gazes of the Obums, Chinyu's gaze occasionally passed through the gaps between the piles of firewood and swept over the surrounding tall buildings. He constantly compared them with the topographic map of the city lord's mansion in his memory. Night fell. Chinyu leaned against the pile of firewood and closed his eyes to rest. Everything that he was doing might seem extremely tiring to these weak Obums, but it was nothing to Chinyu. It was just that he didn't dare to act rashly before confirming the strength of the city lord's mansion. He subconsciously looked in the direction in front of him. Even though he was separated by a huge pile of firewood and countless thick walls, he could still vaguely feel the terrifying aura that could devour everything. It was like an invisible thorn in the darkness that could easily pierce through his body. Sure enough, there was an existence in the city lord's mansion that even the 9 Serene Peak, Stronghold Master, and Miracle Doctor Yi feared. Chinyu had completely recovered from his injuries. It could be said that the current Chinyu was at his most powerful state in his life. However, he still had no chance of winning against such an existence. He only had one chance. If he was discovered, Chinyu didn't think that he could escape from such an existence. Chinyu retracted his gaze because he didn't dare to stare at it for too long. The perception of such an existence was definitely extremely terrifying. Just as he was thinking of a way to quietly complete the mission, a few movements suddenly came from afar, and they were quickly approaching from afar. No, stop. It was the suppressed voice of the female Obum that was filled with embarrassment and anger. Then there was the excited gasp of a male. Don't resist anymore. In any case, you've already been ruthlessly played by the guards. Why don't you have a taste of me again? Walala, a pile of firewood was pushed down, revealing Chinyu's figure. He looked at the 2 Obums that were rolling together and sighed helplessly. He really wasn't interested in this sort of thing that was similar to 2 little piggies rolling together. He got up and was about to leave. Seeing this scene, the female Obum's eyes instantly dimmed. She cursed in a low voice, "Coward. You stop right there." As if to show off his bravery, the male Obum shouted in a low voice. He pointed at Chinyu and said, "Go outside and guard for me. If anyone comes in, see if I don't skin you alive." He had already recognized that Chinyu was the most cowardly fledgling. He wasn't worried that Chinyu would dare to disobey his orders. In just 3 short days, he had already formed a deep-rooted impression in the hearts of the many Obums. Chinyu frowned and turned to leave. When he passed by, the female Obum hugged him. "I now announce that he is the man that I have chosen. If you want to obtain me, then ruthlessly beat him to the ground." After saying that, she glanced at Chinyu and turned to leave. Her eyes were filled with malice. Clearly, she was taking revenge on Chinyu for standing by and not doing anything. Or perhaps she was trying to buy time for herself. All right. Then I will twist his head off and let you know that obeying me is the best choice. The male Obum laughed in a low voice and turned around. His body could be considered burly and powerful among the Obums. He was more than a head taller than the Obum that Chinyu had transformed into. His short hind hooves exerted force, and the friction between his body and the air produced a piercing sound. He was so fast that he left behind afterimages. Clearly, he had already grasped part of the power of his bloodline. Bang! There was a muffled sound, and the ground seemed to tremble. The female Obum, who was thinking of a way to escape, suddenly opened her mouth wide. She stared blankly at the Obum, who had been knocked to the ground and was bleeding from all 7 orifices. Her body couldn't help but tremble. Chinyu glanced at the female obum and turned to leave. He believed that if this obum was smart enough, he wouldn't say a single word about tonight's events. Of course, the best way to deal with this was to kill these two obums. However, Chinyu didn't want to expose himself in the slightest while he was hiding. Sure enough, everything was peaceful. The obum that Chinyu had knocked down seemed to have injured its head. After a moment of commotion, it was dragged away and dealt with. After a short period of chaos, the kitchen area became quiet once more. Chinyu continued to chop firewood, burying himself deeper. Occasionally, he could feel a scorching heat sweeping over from nearby. It was the female obum. Fortunately, she only watched from afar and didn't dare to come close. Chinyu frowned inwardly and allowed her to do as she pleased. Another 2 days passed. Just as Chinyu was about to decide what to do, an alarm sounded in the city lord's mansion. In an instant, he felt a terrifying aura that made his heart palpitate from the center of the city lord's mansion. The chaos lasted for an entire night. Soon, fragmented news arrived. A human cultivator who had infiltrated the city lord's mansion seemed to have tried to kill the Darafi steward because of a personal grudge. Fortunately, the great and benevolent city lord had bestowed a life-saving treasure upon the loyal steward, allowing him to preserve his life. Chinyu cursed inwardly. He instantly thought of Xiao Zhao. She was definitely the one who had an accident last night. Based on what he sensed, if the owner of that terrifying aura were to take action, it would be easy to suppress her. Perhaps Chinyu's current identity had been exposed along with her capture. Go, I have to leave this place immediately. Even if I fail the mission, I won't be blamed for it. It's better than staying here and waiting for death. However, before Chinyu could sneak away, the kitchen area was heavily surrounded. An obum, aristocrat whose fur was completely white, arrived. His eyes were cold as if he was looking at a lowly ant. He coldly said, "The city lord has ordered that all obums in the mansion are to be strictly investigated. If they dare to resist, they will be killed without exception." As he waved his front hooves, space fluctuated and a huge bronze mirror appeared. Revealing mirror. With a cry of alarm, an obum in the kitchen suddenly shot up. His form rapidly changed, and in the blink of an eye, he turned into a tall human man and howled as he fled. Whoosh! With the sound of breaking air, a sharp arrow burning with white flames instantly caught up to the hidden human cultivator. With a blood-curdling scream, his chest was pierced and the flames quickly spread to his entire body. He fell to the ground and violently tumbled a few times before quickly turning into a pile of ashes. Chapter 859. Chinyu's thoughts violently fluctuated, and he immediately gave up on the idea of forcefully escaping. His eyes inadvertently swept over the bow in the white obum's hands, and his pupils contracted, revealing a hint of fear. This was an extremely terrifying weapon. Even with his current ancient body, he would definitely not be able to block it. The obums in the kitchen area trembled under the cold gazes of the ferocious guards, and they quickly lined up. The obum that Chinyu had transformed into shrank his head, and his body trembled. His eyes were filled with fear as he looked at the bronze mirror. It had a simple and unadorned appearance, and its surface was covered in strange patterns. Although he didn't know why it was called the revealing mirror, it wasn't hard to guess its use just from its name. It was highly likely that the obums had specifically used it to break through the flesh transformation technique. Thinking of this, Chinyu's heart tightened, and his heartbeat slowed down. At the same time, a barrier quietly appeared between his flesh and blood. This barrier was a minor change that Chinyu had made when he cultivated the flesh transformation technique, using his ancient body as a foundation. This was also the reason why Chinyu didn't have the confidence to escape after considering it. With this flesh barrier, his flesh transformation technique's concealment ability would be greatly enhanced. Hurry up and line up. Walk in front of the revealing mirror one by one. Don't even think about slipping through. The guard obums roared. The white obum stood in front of the revealing mirror, coldly staring at every obum that approached. His hands that held the bow were like iron, and his slightly taut and bulging blood vessels were like steel chains hidden beneath his flesh. Every breath he took was filled with the smell of iron and blood. It was obvious that this was a ruthless destroyer that had truly experienced the baptism of slaughter. Chinyu didn't doubt that if he revealed the slightest flaw in front of him, he would be shot without hesitation. The Oboms stepped forward one by one. Their trembling bodies were reflected in the revealing mirror, revealing humble and fearful expressions. Chinyu suddenly felt a gaze fall on him. He vaguely glanced over, and his eyes met with a female Obom. His heart immediately sank. It really is her. It seemed that because of what happened that night, she had already developed suspicions. If she snitched on him, cold sweat seeped out of Chinyu's back. Soon, the female Obom walked in front of the revealing mirror. The mirror reflected her figure without any changes. All right, let's go. Next. After a few more Oboms passed by, it was Chinyu's turn. He trembled as he walked in front of the display mirror. There was no flaw in his fearful expression, but his heart was cold. With the help of his ancient body, he had made some changes to the flesh transformation technique, allowing him to have a more formidable concealment ability. But whether or not he could hide from them was still unknown. Once he was exposed, even if he knew that the odds were against him, Chinyu definitely wouldn't sit idly by and wait for death. He would instantly erupt with his strongest strength and kill this white Obom on the spot. Only by killing it would he have a chance to escape. At this time, the quiet display mirror suddenly trembled. Its smooth surface began to tumble like waves, gradually turning into a vortex. It was like a great mouth that led to the abyss, wanting to swallow Chinyu. The entire area fell into a deathly silence. Chinyu's body stiffened. At this moment, he could feel 3 pairs of eyes locking onto him. Each one was enough to pose a threat to him, and the white Obom standing in front of the display mirror with a bow in his hand was only one of them. If he resisted, he feared that a terrifying attack would immediately arrive and he would be severely wounded. But if he didn't resist, the result would be even more miserable. Between breaths, beads of sweat appeared on Chinyu's forehead and his complexion paled. The white Obom raised the bow in his hand. But at this time, he frowned, a puzzled look in his eyes. This was because the vortex in the display mirror had suddenly stopped. There were no further changes, as if it couldn't determine the true identity of this Obom in front of it. But soon, the puzzlement and hesitation in the white Obom's eyes vanished. The bow in his hand erupted with a terrifying aura. This was only the lowest of Oboms. In his eyes, this Obom was only slightly higher than a human slave. Since he had doubts, then he might as well kill him. Wait a moment. A scream interrupted the white Obom's actions, and it also stopped Chinyu's explosive power. A female Obom rushed over and hugged Chinyu tightly. Her face was full of pleading. "Honorable Lord, please forgive him. Let the child in my stomach see its father after it is born." The white Obom frowned. He looked at the female Obom with rapt attention. Indeed, he could feel a weak aura of life from her stomach. "Are you sure that the child in your stomach is his?" The female Obom grabbed Chinyu's hand. "Honorable Lord, this is our blood energy fluctuation. You can feel it. They are of the same origin. There's no doubt about this." A thin bloody light seeped out from between her fingers. The white Obom's aura relaxed a little as he coldly said, "Let's go." Since he had developed a bloodline, there was no problem with this Obom's identity. Although the human race's flesh transformation technique was powerful, it couldn't fuse with bloodlines. "Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Your Excellency." The female Obom's face was filled with gratitude as she quickly pulled Chinyu away. 2 hours later, the white Obom quickly led the guards away. During this period of time, tyrannical energy fluctuations suddenly erupted from multiple locations in the City Lord's mansion. However, these fluctuations only lasted for an extremely short period of time before quickly disappearing. It was clear that after this sudden and strict investigation, all the humans hidden in the City Lord's mansion had been found. Because of these filthy, damned human cultivators causing trouble, the honorable city lord is in a very bad mood. Thus, we must pay special attention to today's lunch. There cannot be the slightest mistake. Otherwise, none of you will have a good ending. With a roar, the Obums in the kitchen quickly began to work. Chinyu walked back to the pile of firewood, and with a slash of his knife, the firewood was easily cut into two. However, at this moment, his calm face and his eyes were filled with shock. Night fell, and the chaotic day in the city lord's mansion passed. Chinyu closed his eyes to rest, but then he suddenly opened them. Several breaths later, the sound of footsteps rang out, and the female, Obum, walked over. Her expression was calm as she said, "You already know my identity?" Chinyu nodded and said in a deep voice, "You are a human. Humans. It has been far too long since anyone has mentioned them in front of me. It has been so long that I have nearly forgotten my true identity." The female, Obum, touched her face with her front hoof. "That's right. I am indeed a human woman. I know that you are very curious as to how I was able to deceive the display mirror and how I got pregnant." She paused for a moment before continuing. "In fact, it is very simple. It is because you're not the only one who has made changes to the flesh transformation technique. As for the changes I made, it is a complete and irreversible transformation. Once I use it, apart from my consciousness, I will be a true Obum." Chinyu was silent for a moment before saying, "Thank you." The female Obum said, "There's no need. Just treat it as me returning the favor. Although I do not know your goal in entering the city lord's mansion, I must remind you that it is best for you to leave quickly. I can help you once, but I might not be able to help you every time. And once you are exposed, I will also be in great trouble." She nodded and turned to leave. Chinyu did not ask why she had undergone such an extreme transformation. It must have been a story that left one in despair. Chinyu never imagined that he would be able to see Xiao Zhao again. After she was exposed, she had actually escaped from the depths of the city lord's mansion and that terrifying aura. Although her current situation was extremely dangerous, she was still alive. This was already quite amazing. A large number of humans were imprisoned in a giant black cage. On one side of the cage were men, and on the other side were women. Unlike the other slaves, these people were all handsome and clean. They wore gorgeous robes, and if it weren't for their panicked expressions and the cages they were locked up in, it would seem as if they were attending a banquet that was about to be held. As mentioned before, to Obum, besides being slaves, humans were also an extremely delicious food. It was said that in the circle of Obum, the custom of tasting human flesh was prevalent. They called it the human feast, and these beautiful men and women who were brought to the kitchen and imprisoned in cages were clearly raw materials for food. And Xiao Zhao's figure was in the cage that imprisoned the women. Her complexion was particularly pale, but it added a sense of delicate beauty to her. 1 week from now, there will be top nobles from the imperial city who will come to inspect the great king city. These humans will be the main course of the banquet. You must take good care of them and prepare them ahead of time. There cannot be any mistakes." The Darafi steward growled. His head was wrapped in thick bandages, and one could faintly see a bit of red. These were the humiliating scars left on his body by those damned human assassins. He had to thank the noble, benevolent, and incomparably powerful Lord City Lord for bestowing him with a life-saving treasure. Otherwise, his head would have already been split open, and red and white blood would have flowed out. Thinking of this, Darafi's hatred for humans deepened. He angrily snorted and coldly swept his gaze over the cages. "Watch over them. I want these food to maintain the greatest fear and awe towards the great Obum race at every moment before they die." "Yes, Lord Steward. Please rest assured. Nothing will happen." Besides the Obum in the kitchen, there was also a team of Obum guards left behind to strictly protect the humans in the cages. Chinyu waited until the 4th day before he finally found a chance to communicate with Xiao Zhao. It was clear that Xiao Zhao, who was filled with fear and despair towards the future, had not sensed Chinyu's existence for the past 4 days. Thus, when he appeared in front of her on his own initiative, she nearly cried out in alarm. Her eyes were filled with excitement. Chenyu was so frightened that he broke out in a cold sweat. He shouted in a low voice, "If you want to die, then just do it. Don't drag me down with you." You. Xiao Zhao's face flushed red. She knew that she had behaved badly, but she had never imagined that Chenyu would be able to avoid the strict investigation. It had to be known that she had been forced into a corner. In the end, she had only been able to mix in with these human eaters and barely survive until now. Xiao Zhao took a deep breath and lowered her voice. She gritted her teeth and said, "Don't worry about me. Now that the strict investigation is over, the City Lord's mansion is relaxed. You must think of a way to complete the mission that the Stronghold Master gave you. Remember that Durafi might have other life-saving treasures on him. You must act quickly and not give him a chance to react." Chenyu looked up in surprise. He could see the fear in this girl's eyes. Even so, she still wanted him to complete the mission first. She was quite loyal, but unfortunately, Chenyu would not act unless he was confident. He did not want to court death. "I can't act now. I need to wait for a chance." After saying this, Chenyu turned around and left. He could not stay for too long, or else he would be easily discovered. Xiao Zhao's expression changed slightly. She did not know if Chenyu was afraid and did not dare to continue with the mission. But she had no other choice but to continue waiting. "You know this woman?" The female Opam's voice sounded behind him. Chenyu put down the hatchet and turned around to meet her gaze. "That's right. She was the one who tried to assassinate Durafi." What a foolish woman. Not only did she fail, she even implicated so many people. The female Opam sneered. Suddenly, her expression changed. "You can't be thinking of saving her, right? Let me tell you, it's best not to try. Otherwise, you will only be sending yourself to death." Chenyu shook his head. "I'm not willing to take the risk, but you can understand that she is the leader of this mission. If she dies, my fate will be terrible. So, if it's possible, I must save her." He paused for a moment. "And when that time comes, I might need your help." The female Opam's expression changed slightly. She gritted her teeth and said, "Are you sure that I have no choice but to help you?" Chenyu looked at her in silence. "Consider me unlucky. If I had known this would happen, I would have watched you get killed." The female Opam cursed and turned to leave. A hint of apology appeared in Chenyu's eyes, but quickly disappeared. In this situation, he couldn't care too much. Just as he said, if there was a chance, he had to save Xiao Zhao. As for the debt he owed this pitiful woman, he could only think of a way to make it up to her in the future. The 4th day, the 5th day, the 6th day. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of the banquet for the nobles of the imperial city. The faces of the humans in the cages were filled with despair. This included Xiao Zhao. Ever since the exchange that day, Chenyu hadn't approached her at all. Just like the Opams around him, he coldly watched everything that was about to happen to them. It seemed that when he said that he would wait for an opportunity, it was really just an excuse to comfort her. Xiao Zhao's gaze inadvertently swept over Chenyu. Amidst the fear in her eyes, there was a hint of mockery and contempt. As expected, he was as timid as a mouse. If it wasn't for the fact that she hoped that he could complete the young Mrs. orders, she wished that she could immediately expose Chenyu's identity and drag him to hell with her. "Hurry up and get moving. We must bring out our best standards for today's banquet. We must satisfy the nobles from the imperial city." As the chef Opam roared, the kitchen immediately started operating at full speed. One by one, the humans were quickly pulled out of the cages. Over the past few days, their food had been tampered with. Now their limbs were sore and weak, and they couldn't resist at all. In fact, they didn't even have the right to cry today. All they had on their faces was a faint and calm smile. It was as if these humans felt joy from the bottom of their hearts at being able to become food for the noble Opam. At this moment, the Opam that Chenyu had transformed into suddenly raised his head and looked into the depths of the City Lord mansion. The source of the incomparably terrifying aura that he had been sensing all this time was finally moving. Looking at its trajectory, she was finally leaving. Was she preparing to leave the city and welcome the nobles from the imperial city? The opportunity had come. Chenyu closed his eyes. In his ears, He could hear the soft moans of the humans being cooked. He wasn't even sure whether or not Xiao Zhao was among them. But right now, he couldn't do anything. Otherwise, he would only be harming himself. Finally, the aura that he had sensed left the city lord mansion and vanished from the range of his senses. It was time to act. Shua. Qin Yu opened his eyes. At this moment, his hazy and perturbed expression turned icy cold, like an icy spring that gushed out from the frozen earth. The silent heart in his chest began to vigorously beat, but it didn't release too much of its aura. All of the fluctuations were imprisoned within his flesh and blood. The female opium that had been paying attention to Qin Yu this entire time had a change in complexion. Before she could look away, Qin Yu met her gaze and nodded. Clenching her teeth, the female opium walked over. "What do you want to do?" Qin Yu narrowed his eyes. "Help me sneak into the dining hall. You don't need to worry about anything else. You want to take advantage of this opportunity to save someone? Stop dreaming. There are even more guards in the kitchen today. If you make even the slightest noise, you will die without a grave. I have my own plans." The female opium looked at Qin Yu. His expression was calm, without the slightest hint of his inner emotions. "You don't waste any more time. Hurry up and go," Qin Yu shouted. The female opium's heart trembled. She suddenly felt awe. She nodded and quickly left. Qin Yu's gaze fell on her. He saw her approach an opium guard. It was unknown what the two of them said, but the guard's gaze swept over her and then turned to look at Qin Yu. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred, and he immediately put on a look of fear and trepidation. "Coward," the guard sneered. "Then we have an agreement. Don't go back on your word." The female opium forced a smile. "Of course I wouldn't dare to deceive you, my lord." The guard reached out with his hoof and touched her body. He chuckled and said, "Let him come over. Hurry up and follow me to change clothes." Yes, thank you, my lord." The female opium turned around. "You can go in, but I can't help you with anything else." Qin Yu nodded. "Thank you." He walked to the guard's side and bowed. "Thank you, my lord." "Thank you." "Umph. You lowly opiums sure are adept at betraying your own women. Don't worry. I promise to help you, and I will definitely do it. But be careful when you do things. If you cause trouble, no one can save you." The guard sneered. He suddenly glanced at the female opium, licked his lips, and said, "You can come in as well. You can help your man change his clothes." The female opium's face paled. She clearly realized something. Although she had already accepted her fate, she had to do it in front of a fellow clansman. But at this moment, she had no room to resist. Seeing the guard's face turn dark, she quickly nodded in agreement. Qin Yu maintained his bowing posture, as though he didn't see anything. The guard smiled and said a few words to his companion. He then turned around and led his men inside. The dining hall was a key area, but with the guard leading the way, there were no obstructions along the way. "All right, go inside and change your clothes. You come in as well. I'm tired from today's shift. You can help me relieve my fatigue." "Yes, my lord." The female opium glanced at Qin Yu. Seeing that he didn't show any expression, she smiled bitterly in her heart. A fellow clansman? Sigh, forget it. She had already fallen to such a state. So what if she was a little more lowly? She would just treat it as exhausting the last bit of her humanity. From today onwards, she would be a true opium, and she would no longer have anything to do with humans. Let's do it here. I'm short on time, so I won't do any foreplay." The guard chuckled and pounced over. Pooh! There was a muffled sound, and the air was instantly filled with the smell of blood. The female opium widened her eyes. If she hadn't covered her mouth with all her might, she would have screamed. Killing an opium guard was definitely a major matter. She would definitely be thoroughly investigated, and she wouldn't be able to escape at all. You. Qin Yu glanced at her. "If you don't want to die, then follow me." After changing his clothes, he pushed open the door and walked out. The female opium controlled the trembling of her body and hurriedly followed behind him. She had no other choice, unless she really wanted to die. "Huh? Who are you?" An opium blocked in front of them and frowned. Qin Yu's footsteps didn't stop. Space suddenly distorted like a wrinkled piece of paper, and this opium was directly wrapped up and twisted into pieces. Following that, several more opums were killed in the same way. When Chinyu stopped, he had already arrived at the scene of the human feast. Several human delicacies had already been prepared. They were placed on huge tableware, and they wore clean and gorgeous robes. They had joyful smiles on their faces. Even more human delicacies were being prepared. Their bodies were twitching, but they could only let out soft moans. They couldn't move their limbs at all. Xiao Zhao was among them. However, her luck was very good. She was the last in the order of production, and she had just finished the cleaning process. Using humans as ingredients, cooking all sorts of delicacies. Chinyu took a deep breath and stepped in. His sudden appearance instantly attracted many gazes. A white, fat, and bloated obum in a pure white chef's uniform roared. "Bastards, where did you two come from? How dare you come in without cleaning your bodies? What if you contaminate the honorable lord's food?" Bang. His head was directly smashed into pieces, and red and white flew everywhere, cutting off his words. "Ah, you actually dare." Bang, another head exploded. "Run. This opum has gone crazy. Save me. Gar. The opum chefs that were carefully preparing the human feast fell into panic and fear. But everything that was happening here was covered by an invisible strength, so the outside world couldn't sense what was happening. Xiao Zhao's eyes widened. She watched as Qin Yu silently walked forward. He didn't do anything, but the heads of the opums were like overinflated balloons, exploding one after another. Soon, the entire kitchen was covered in scarlet. Everywhere one looked were the twitching, headless corpses of the opums. What are you doing here?" Xiao Zhao's eyes were red as she struggled to speak. Light flashed and a robe condensed. Qin Yu covered her naked snow-white body. His voice was calm as he said, "Don't worry. I will complete the mission." He turned and looked at the female, opum, that had been scared silly. He paused for a moment and said, "I still don't know your name, a human name." She was stunned for a moment before she regained her composure. At this time, he was actually asking for her name? Crazy, he must be crazy. But instinctively, she muttered, "Xiang Shui." Qin Yu nodded. "My name is Qin Yu." Xiang Shui stared at him in a daze. Was this the time to introduce themselves? Could it be that you don't know that you will soon die? No, all three of them were going to die here. Qin Yu didn't care about her expression. He turned and walked towards the humans that were already in the process of cooking. These people's lives had ended the moment they entered. Even if they didn't die now, they would soon be killed by the drugs in their bodies. Chapter 860. Qin Yu leaped onto the cooking table and pressed his hand on a human male. He instantly injected power into his body and temporarily suppressed the medicinal effects. It was as if he had been fished out of the water. He gasped for breath, and because he could clearly feel the pain in his body, his face turned deathly pale. His body curled up and trembled. However, excitement surged in the depths of his eyes. He turned his neck with difficulty and glanced at the corpses of the obums around him. He laughed as if he was crying. "Ha ha! Ha ha ha! Good death! Good death! Brother, I don't know who you are, but I, Lu Sheng, have to thank you. Thank you for letting me see this scene. You want to eat me? Let's see who dies first." Delightful, delightful, to be able to see the fate of these beasts before I die. I no longer have any regrets. Brother, throw the corpses of these beasts into the pot. I'm hungry. I want to have a good meal before I die. However, not everyone could accept reality. A woman lying in the pot of oil, her body yellowed from the explosions, desperately struggled to break free. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred, and he rescued her. She stretched out her trembling hand and looked at him with fear in her eyes. "Save me. Please save me. I don't want to die." Her weak voice was filled with despair, but there was also a trace of hope and pleading that came from the bottom of her heart. Qin Yu was silent for a moment before he slowly said, "I'm sorry. I can't save you." "No." The woman broke down. Her tears affected the flesh on her face, and a large piece of her flesh cracked open, revealing jelly-like flesh that trembled constantly. I feel so uncomfortable. I don't want to die. I don't want to die." She struggled, and the surface of her body kept cracking open. Large pieces of flesh fell off, revealing her squirming organs and white bones. Although she remained intact on the surface, her body had already been completely cut apart by the chef, Obum, and she had become a true delicacy. Brother, kill her. Let her suffer less and die with more dignity, a human male said bitterly. A human male at the side spoke bitterly. He paused for a moment, then continued. Then, I'll have to trouble you to send me off as well. These bastards are too ruthless. I can't help but scream. I'll have to trouble you to let me go like a man. Cough, cough. So I'm not the only one. My body feels like it's being stirred by knives. I can't hold it in any longer. The sooner I die, the sooner I'll be free. At the very least, I can still say that I'm a person who could decide my own life and death, and not food on Obum's dining table. Chinyu took a deep breath. He closed his eyes and then opened them again. The woman's pained body suddenly relaxed, and the pained and desperate expression on her face gradually relaxed. On her bloody face, there was a light smile, as if she had fallen into a beautiful memory. At the same time, her pupils began to dilate. Finally, they lost their focus and dimmed. She had died. This was Qin Yu's attack. He had used his powerful soul to create an illusion for her, blocking out all perception and cutting off all pain. This wasn't the result she wanted, but it was the best result she could obtain right now. Brother, please send me off. The man's limbs had been cut off. The cuts were smooth like jade, and there wasn't a single drop of blood flowing out. Flowers, fruits, and vegetables decorated his body. He bared his teeth and tried his best to smile. Brother, my name is Hu Tao. I am a human, Qin Yu nodded. Hu Tao, I'll remember you. His soul force erupted and the man's eyes glazed over. His smile became tranquil, and he slowly closed his eyes. As Qin Yu returned to the dot, there were only 6 people left alive. 2 were women and 4 were men. The 2 women felt that they could still hold on for a bit longer, so they wanted to continue living. The men's attitudes were simple and crude. 2 wanted to see Qin Yu cook with Obum, and the other 2 wanted to personally taste it so that they could eat their fill before they died. Xiao Zhao's eyes were red and tears fell down her cheeks. She thought back to many years ago when her parents had been turned into food by the cruel Obum and eaten. She lifted a hand to wipe her eyes and then looked at Qin Yu. As she looked at his calm and solemn face, she didn't know how much gentleness she felt. Xiang Shui glanced at Qin Yu, who was really preparing to cook a feast for Obum. Her lips moved, and she said with difficulty, "Although I don't think it's appropriate to say these things right now, shouldn't we take this chance to run away? If we stay here any longer, we really will die." "Ah, that's right. Brother, hurry and run away. There's no need to worry about us. Hurry up and leave. The few of us can chat, and we'll soon sleep. Eating or not eating isn't important at all." Qin Yu didn't turn around. He lightly said, "I will leave, but not now. I still have some time to help you fulfill your wishes." He paused for a moment. "It's just that I haven't cooked for many years, and the ingredients are unfamiliar. I fear the taste won't be too good." "Ah, it seems that brother has other plans. Then, let's not talk about it anymore. The taste isn't important. What's important is my mood. Then let's wait and eat a good meal. Brother, it's fine if you make something simple. Once you finish eating, you can leave." Qin Yu nodded and immersed himself in processing the white and fat corpse of Obum. The flesh of these pig-like creatures was quite good. Unfortunately, if it fell into his hands, it probably wouldn't taste too good. "Let me do it." Xiao Zhao wobbled over. "Cooking is something that women are better at." Qin Yu glanced at her and said, "Okay." He turned around and found a table. He swept it clean and placed a few chairs on it. Then, he placed the 2 women and 4 men on it. "You guys wait a moment." After speaking, Qin Yu closed his eyes. He was also waiting. With Steward Arafi's loyalty and respect towards the city lord, he would definitely personally confirm something as important as making a human feast to prevent any accidents from occurring. And Qin Yu was waiting here, waiting for him to come. Xiao Zhao clearly understood Qin Yu's thoughts. She turned to look at him, shame filling her heart. She discovered that from beginning to end, She hadn't seen Qin Yu clearly, and she had thought herself infallible enough to give him a poor evaluation. Looking at his calm appearance, how could he be a cowardly clown who only wanted to win the attention of women if he was able to do this in such a dangerous situation? At this moment, Xiao Zhao suddenly felt relieved. She had no reason to believe that Qin Yu would definitely be able to complete the mission that the young miss had given him and bring them out of here alive. So now, she only needed to be at ease and prepare one last meal for these miserable people of the same race. In the kitchen, Steward Darafi. "Greetings, Sir Steward." "Sir, you're here." Respectful greetings followed. Darafi was expressionless, but his eyes were as sinister as a wolf's. "How are the preparations for the human feast?" Reporting to Steward, "It's still in the process of being made," and Obum said with a flattering expression. Darafi sneered. "Lead the way. This is the finale of the banquet that the city lord has invited the nobles of the imperial city. Of course, I have to personally see it before I can be at ease. Those damned humans actually dared to assassinate him. He had to personally see them all turned into dishes to vent his hatred." "Yes, Steward. Please follow me." And Obum led the way and led everyone into the dining hall. Qin Yu's heart stirred, and his eyes opened. "They're here." The entire dining hall was locked down by invisible rules, isolating the outside world from the outside world. This was so that no one would be able to sense what was happening inside. And these invisible rules wove together like a giant net. Any aura that entered would be captured. Qin Yu had already memorized Darafi's aura, so he naturally wouldn't make a mistake. The table was now filled with exquisite utensils. Large pieces of red meat were being stewed, and several men were eating in large mouthfuls. Seeing Qin Yu open his eyes, one of them said, "Brother, are you leaving?" Qin Yu nodded. He stood up and said, "I can only accompany you until now. Everyone, take care. Brother, take care. We will never see each other again. We can only repay your kindness in our next life. Hurry up and leave. You must leave this place alive." Qin Yu didn't say anything else. He turned and left. Xiao Zhao and Xiang Shui hurriedly followed behind him. Darafi suddenly came to a stop. He forcefully twitched his long nose, and there seemed to be a strange smell in the air. This was the smell of blood. His eyes widened, and a look of shock and anger appeared on his face. He opened his mouth to roar, but at this moment it was as if an invisible hand had grabbed his neck, suppressing all his sounds. "Kacha!" The sound of bones breaking was particularly clear. The Darafi steward maintained his terrified expression as his body softly fell to the ground. The steward has been assassinated. There's an assassin. The eyes of the Obums beside him instantly turned red. The steward had been killed in front of them. No matter what, they couldn't avoid being implicated. What awaited them was the wrath of the city lord, and they would be burned to ashes. But soon, their fear and anger became meaningless. There was a sudden fluctuation in the air, like a sudden tide, and also like a gaping mouth that swallowed all the Obums. There was a low cry, and the air trembled. Qin Yu stepped forward, raised his hand, and gripped the Darafi steward's corpse. Bang! Space violently shook. His corpse seemed to be eroded by the wind, directly turning into powder. All that was left over was a black stone. As if sensing a threat, this stone struggled to escape the spatial imprisonment. But it couldn't escape Qin Yu's strength. Xiao Zhao's eyes brightened. "Qin Yu, hurry and seal it." Without needing a reminder, Qin Yu had already moved. His 5 fingers instantly clenched into a fist, and the black stone fell into his palm with a mournful cry, no longer responding. "Let's go." Qin Yu shouted out loud and quickly rushed out. At the same time, his appearance changed, and he turned into the Darafi steward. After leaving the dining hall, Qin Yu shouted out, "Hurry and get out of the way. The city lord needs to send this human woman outside the city so that the nobles of the imperial city can enjoy dessert." Without giving the guards any time to react, he brought Xiao Zhao and Xiang Shui out. Right now, he had to race against time. Darafi had already been killed, and without a doubt, the terrifying aura within the City Lord mansion had already sensed it. If he couldn't escape as soon as possible, then once she returned, all that awaited him was death. Outside the Grand King's city, banners fluttered in the wind. Countless opums gathered together, their faces full of respect and flattering smiles as they chatted with the top nobles of the imperial city. Sophia suddenly frowned, a cold light flashing in her eyes. She had sensed Darafi's aura, but it had suddenly vanished. This meant that he had been killed. She had just left the City Lord mansion, and Darafi had been killed. Damn it! Taking a deep breath, Sophia bowed. Respected Mr. Olas, there's been an emergency in the Grand King City that I need to deal with. I'm truly sorry, but I ask that you allow me to leave early. Olas smiled and nodded. City Lord, your business is more important. And I still have a lot of time to slowly communicate. After Sophia expressed her apologies once more, she turned and flew back towards the Grand King City. Her bright and clear eyes were icy cold. No matter who it was, none of them could think of escaping today. Qin Yu's complexion changed. He suddenly felt someone lock onto him from afar. A cold, killing intent that penetrated into the depths of his soul caused his body to stiffen, nearly freezing his blood. He had been discovered. Bang! Qin Yu's aura instantly erupted. He no longer maintained his opium state and returned to his human form. He grabbed Xiao Zhao and Xiang Shui and howled forwards. Ah, it's a human cultivator. Hurry and stop him. Kill. With angry roars, the opiums rushed forwards one after another, trying to stop Qin Yu. But soon, they felt fear. Scram! With a roar, Qin Yu stomped his feet. The ground instantly shattered and collapsed, forming a massive shockwave that swept out in all directions. Bang! Bang! The opiums that rushed forwards were sent flying backwards at an even faster speed. Their bodies emitted crackling sounds as their bones shattered. We can't stop him. This human is too terrifying. Everyone run. The opiums screamed miserably as they scattered in all directions. Qin Yu didn't stop. He brought Xiao Zhao and Xiang Shui out of the city. In the opposite direction, the killing intent that had locked onto them was approaching at an astonishing speed. Faster, faster, bang! Suddenly, a tyrannical aura erupted in front of them. The source was a black-furred opium. With a loud roar, its body seemed to inflate, rapidly growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, it was over 1,000 feet tall and stood in front of the city gates. Human cultivator, how dare you intrude into the great king's city? Don't even think of leaving today. With a loud roar, the giant black opium raised its hand and ruthlessly slammed downwards. Bang! The air wildly compressed, emitting explosive sounds. Before this palm even landed, a terrifying mountain-like pressure had already descended, completely covering Qin Yu. Qin Yu's pupils shrank, but he didn't stop. Instead, he sped up even more. In the next moment, there was a heaven-shaking explosion. With a miserable scream, the giant black opium's arm broke off and its heavy body was sent flying backwards. A massive amount of blood rained down, like a rain of blood. Qin Yu stuffily coughed, and his face paled. He forcefully suppressed the sweet taste in his mouth and stomped down, taking advantage of the chaos at the city gates to rush out. Great! We escaped! Xiang Shui cried out in joy. Xiao Zhao also revealed a smile. But not only did Qin Yu not slow down, but he even sped up. His pale face also turned even paler. The happy smiles on Xiang Shui and Xiao Zhao's faces vanished, replaced by hesitation and apprehension. They wanted to ask what was going on, but as they looked at Qin Yu's cold and stern face, they didn't know what to say. In the next moment, Xiao Zhao's eyes widened. She turned around and finally sensed the terrifying aura chasing them. This strength was impossible to resist. No wonder Qin Yu was so nervous and didn't dare to stop or flee. But the disparity in strength between the two sides was far too great. In this situation, it was impossible to escape. It was only a matter of time before they were overtaken. Rather than dying together, they might as well Xiao Zhao suddenly said. Qinyu, don't worry about us. Run away by yourself. Remember to give that stone to the stronghold master. Xiang Shui had a panicked expression. What happened? Didn't we already escape? Escape? Xiao Zhao bitterly smiled. It's impossible for us to escape. She bit her lips. Qinyu, don't waste any more time, otherwise it will be too late. Hurry and leave. Qinyu suddenly looked up. We still have a chance. Deep in his eyes, a dark golden light surged. He shouted out loud, Wind, rise. Who? In the next moment, strong winds whipped up between the heavens and earth. Sand and stones flew into the air as far as the eye could see. And this was only what the naked eye could see. As the winds whipped up, invisible lines of rules stirred up like a pool of water. Waves and tremors spread outwards. Standing on the level of rules, it was like a fog had been artificially created to cover this area. Qinyu had a nervous expression. He closed his eyes as he ran, sensing something with all his might. After several breaths of time, his eyes flashed open, a happy smile on his face. It really was like this. At this time, the killing intent approaching from behind was already astonishing enough. But compared to the horrifying black hole that twisted space like space, it was on a completely different level. It was like the existence he since possessed an extremely terrifying might, but for some unknown reason, it could only display a tiny portion of its strength. Thus, the other party was able to lock onto them from afar by using an extremely high boundary and drawing support from the rules of the world. It wasn't her own strength. This was incomparably important. Now, as Qinyu disturbed the rules and artificially created a dense fog, the killing intent locking onto them from behind suddenly blurred. This proved that his guess was correct. If so, then it was as he said to Xiao Zhao. They still had a chance today. His thoughts raced. Without hesitation, Qinyu shouted out once more, Cloud rush. In the skies above, massive clouds gushed out from nothingness. They wove together, turning into thick cumulus clouds. And as time passed, the color of the cumulus clouds deepened. Finally, it turned into a thick darkness, as if it were dyed with ink. As the black cumulus clouds condensed, the chaos of the world rules became even greater. The killing intent locking onto them weakened once more. Qinyu took a deep breath. His voice was like thunder. Rain falls. Rumble, rumble. With a loud roar of thunder, lightning raged out in all directions. Then, black clouds tumbled and a torrential rain poured down. The rain was thick and dense, instantly blocking one's line of sight. At the same time, the rules of the world were washed away by the torrential rain, completely thrown into chaos. This was because this rain was solid rainwater and also contained a massive amount of the power of the rules. After Qinyu fused with the Tao Monarch Great Tao and borrowed the strength of the Jade Embryo Egg, he had grasped a great supernatural ability of the Divine Tao, laws from the word. With a single word, it was the law of the world. Thus it could cause winds to blow, cause clouds to surge, and cause rain to fall. With Qinyu's current cultivation, he could only summon the most basic laws from the word. But he could still disturb the rules of the world. Although he couldn't tear apart the killing intent locking onto him, it was more than enough to interfere. At this moment, the killing intent locking onto its target had lost its target. Qinyu's eyes brightened. Without hesitation, he erupted with his greatest strength, and his speed rose to the limit. He was like an arrow released from a bow. Dragging Xiao Zhao and Xiang Shui, he instantly tore through the curtain of rain, forming a straight path that howled as he vanished from sight. 10 breaths of time later, a snow-white obum that naturally exuded a noble and powerful aura arrived. Sophia's icy eyes swept around and her eyebrows furrowed. Laws from a word. There was a dignified tone in her voice. It had to be known that even in the Divine Tao, there were far too few people that could cultivate such a great supernatural ability. This in itself represented one's comprehension of the great Tao of the world, as well as the degree to which one was favored by the world. It could be said that as long as one could obtain laws from the word, as long as they didn't perish along the way, they would have great achievements in the future. And what shocked Sophia the most was that if her senses weren't wrong, the person who killed Darafi hadn't even stepped into the divine Tao yet. Without reaching the divinity realm, they already possessed the supernatural ability of laws from the word. This sort of matter did indeed exist, but those that could accomplish this were all top proud children of heaven in the world. But why would such a person appear in the royal king's city, infiltrate the city lord's mansion, and kill the fish bait she had deliberately left behind? Could it be that this person was one of her subordinates? If this really was the case, then things were a bit troublesome. Sophia's eyebrows furrowed even tighter. She coldly snorted, and the power of laws that Qin Yu had condensed with laws from the word was instantly swept away. The strong winds, the clouds, and the torrential rain instantly vanished. The skies were clear and bright, without a single trace remaining. This was originally a backup plan, but it seems I will have to use it first. What a pity for this cultivator who hasn't even reached the divinity realm but has already grasped laws from the word. Sophia muttered to herself. Then she turned and left. Who? Qin Yu gasped for breath, a burning sensation in his chest. If it weren't for his strong will, he feared he would have collapsed to the ground. He turned to look in the direction of the royal king's city. After confirming that the person chasing him had stopped, his tense heart finally relaxed a little. All right, I'm safe now. Qin Yu sat down cross-legged and began to rapidly restore his strength. Xiang Shue's body trembled with excitement. She never thought that she would be able to survive today. Xiao Zhao deeply looked at him. She lifted a hand and took out a palm-sized jade sword. After pouring a bit of her strength into it, there was a loud crack and the jade sword shattered. A beam of light shot out and instantly vanished from sight. Someone will soon come to rescue us. Chapter 861. Qin Yu bowed. Greetings, Divine Dr. Yi. This junior was lucky enough to complete his mission. This is what the Stronghold Master wanted. Light flashed in his hand, and he took out the black stone. Divine Dr. Yi frowned as his eyes fell on it. Then he composed himself. Very good. Since you have completed your mission, you will naturally obtain a reward. Now come back with me. He put away the black stone and carefully traced it with his fingers. He sighed inwardly. This was truly worthy of being a junior that could compete with a miss. He wasn't someone he could easily deal with. Qin Yu looked up at Divine Dr. Ye's back. He could sense that his aura was as deep as an abyss, terrifying to an unimaginable degree. He was like a slumbering great beast. Once he awoke, he could cause the heavens to collapse and the earth to cave in. But now, after experiencing the pursuit of that terrifying existence in the City Lord Mansion, Qin Yu couldn't help but have a thought. Could it be that Divine Dr. Yi and the Stronghold Master were the same as that existence in the City Lord Mansion? Although they possessed formidable strength, for some unknown reason, they could only display a tiny portion of that strength. Qin Yu quickly suppressed this thought. He was well aware that even if his guess was correct, it would be easy for such an existence to kill him. After smoothly returning to Nine Nether Peak, Xiao Zhao left with Divine Dr. Yi. Qin Yu watched them leave. Then, he turned and said, "Come with me." Xiang Shui nodded again and again. Okay. It was hard to conceal the awe and caution in her expression. She had fallen into opium's influence for a long time. She had no idea that there was such a terrifying influence hidden in this little fragrant mountain. Of course, it was terrifying. Otherwise, how could it have dared to send people to the City Lord Mansion and cause such a great commotion? Moreover, the incomparably powerful Qin Yu had been so respectful to Divine Dr. Yi. Xiang Shui had seen all of this with her own eyes. How could she not know that this seemingly ordinary Divine Dr. Yi was actually an extremely terrifying character? Qin Yu sensed her thoughts, but had no intention of explaining. Right now, he didn't know anything about the existence of Nine Nether Peak. But there was one thing he knew. There was absolutely a great karmic connection between the Stronghold Master, Divine Dr. Yi, and that terrifying existence in the City Lord Mansion. Why were they hiding here? There had to be some secret. Now, Qin Yu understood that this world wasn't as terrifying as he had imagined it to be. With his strength, he could be considered a powerhouse. It was just that the level of people he had come into contact with was too high. After returning to his residence and helping Xiang Shui settle down, Qin Yu immediately went to see Shui Zheng. It wasn't that he cared too much about this cheap big brother of his, but that the relationship between the two of them was simply too close. If one was unlucky, then the other wouldn't be able to escape either. So it was hard for him not to worry about Shui Zheng. The good news was that Shui Zheng's condition was still stable. Compared to when he left, there weren't many changes. It seemed that he could still maintain his condition for a considerable period of time. The bad news was that he showed no signs of waking up or improving. He could still take his last breath at any time. Staying for a while, Qin Yu sighed begrudgingly and left. He couldn't do anything about the wounds of an original God Realm expert. The only people that he could come into contact with that might be able to help Shui Zheng wake up were the two people on the 9th Serene Peak. Qin Yu looked up into the depths of his senses. The tides were undulating like an abyss. Even though he had personally entered it and had even come into close contact with it, he still couldn't help but feel off in the depths of his heart. It was only after 3 days that Qin Yu received the summons from the Stronghold Master. This was expected. Since he had completed the mission with the other party's status, he should keep his promise and give him some benefits. As for what he wanted, Qin Yu had already decided. Outside the courtyard, Xiao Zhao was waiting outside. In just 3 days, her aura had completely recovered. Her handsome face was cold, and her figure was like a sword pointing towards the heavens. However, when her eyes fell on Qin Yu, there was a bit more warmth in them. The Stronghold Master and Old Yi are waiting for you inside. Go in. Qin Yu nodded and pushed open the door. His eyes swept around, and he immediately bowed. Greetings, Stronghold Master, Divine Dr. Yi. Divine Dr. Yi coughed and said, Qin Yu, you did very well in sneaking into the City Lord's mansion. Moreover, you saved Xiao Zhao's life. I already know what happened, so there is no need for me to ask any further questions. The reason I called you here today is to reward you according to your merits. He faintly smiled and said, Now, you can make a request. As long as it is within reason, I will agree. Qin Yu said in a low voice, The reason this junior was able to survive in Obum's sphere of influence until now is all because of the shelter of 9 Nether Peak. It is only natural for me to do things for the Stronghold Master, so I shouldn't have any other requests. But my big brother situation is critical. If possible, you cannot. Divine Doctor Yi interrupted him and waved his hand again and again. Change it, change it. You are far too impolite. You want me to revive that walking corpse with just your little merit? You brat, stop dreaming. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. Indeed, this path wasn't feasible. But it wasn't as if he hadn't obtained anything from this inquiry. For instance, this mysterious and terrifyingly strong Divine Doctor should have a way to save Shui Zheng. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said such a thing. Cough, cough. Let me remind you. A young man full of vigor and vitality should have some small pursuits between a man and a woman. You've already seen through the girl, so as long as you open your mouth and mention it, you might succeed. Divine Doctor Yi had a thoughtful expression on his face. He kindly smiled and said, Qin Yu, what do you think? Of course it wasn't anything. Qin Yu shook his head. This junior is wholeheartedly focused on cultivation and has no intention of being distracted. I thank Divine Dr. Yi for your good intentions. Since saving my big brother isn't enough, then this junior will be so bold as to change my request. He paused for a moment and then said in a low voice, May I ask what the black stone I obtained from that Obum was? If it isn't important to the Stronghold Master, then can you give it to me? You want that stone? Divine Dr. Yi raised an eyebrow, a strange expression on his face. Qin Yu nodded. Yes. Divine Doctor Yi wanted to say something more, but the Stronghold Master suddenly waved his hand. Qin Yu caught it with a paw sound. He looked at the black stone in his palm, a happy expression on his face. Thank you, Stronghold Master. Divine Doctor Yi glanced at the Stronghold Master. Since you've obtained what you want, then hurry up and leave. Yes. Qin Yu turned and left. Divine Dr. Yi impatiently said, "Miss, that stone is fake, and it has been tampered with. How could you agree?" The stronghold master had a strong and fierce face, but she wore a pink dress. She lightly said, "He chose it himself, so I fulfilled his wish. Isn't it good that everyone is happy?" But Divine Dr. Yi suddenly stopped. He rubbed his chin. "Miss, why do I feel that you are deliberately using this opportunity to send this boy to his death? Could it be that you believe this old man's words in your heart and think that he and you—" The stronghold master coldly sneered. "Old Yi, be careful with your words. There are some things you might say that will bring you bad luck." Divine Dr. Yi dryly laughed several times, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. He had only been joking with the miss just now. With her intelligence and thoughts, how could she do something like that? Then there was only one explanation. Hee. It seemed that this boy Qin Yu had entered the eyes of the miss, and she was preparing to take him in as a helper. He hadn't even stepped into the divine realm, but he had already grasped the supernatural ability of speaking laws. He did have the qualifications, and this stone was the test that the miss had given him. Whether or not he could be chosen would depend on his own ability. Grasping the black stone, Qin Yu excitedly left the courtyard. No matter how firm his thoughts were, he still couldn't suppress the smile on his face. He nodded to Xiao Zhao and said, "You're still here? Humph. I will be here if I want to, and I will leave if I want to. It's none of your business." Xiao Zhao sneered. She glared at Qin Yu and then turned to leave. This was inexplicable. Where did she get so angry from? Women were really hard to understand. But right now he was in a good mood, so Qin Yu didn't take it to heart. He glanced at the black stone in his hand and quickly walked away. Returning to his residence, Xiang Shui was waiting. Because of Opum's appearance, she had been staying in her room for the past few days. Seeing Qin Yu return, she smiled. "How is it? Is everything all right?" Xiang Shui's role in successfully completing this mission couldn't be ignored. Qin Yu gripped the black stone in his hand and suddenly said, "Do you want to restore your human form?" "Human form? Human identity?" Xiang Shui's eyes widened, excitement on her face. "You can help me?" As a human woman, if it weren't for the fact that she was in a critical situation and had no other choice, how could she be willing to transform into an ugly Opum? In these past years, Xiang Shui had made many attempts, but in the end they all failed. It was only because of this that she had no choice but to accept her current fate. But now, Qin Yu's words undoubtedly gave her hope. "I can't do it." Xiang Shui's heart sank. But then Qin Yu said, "But I should be able to find someone to help you." The stronghold master, Divine Dr. Yi, and that terrifying existence in Royal King City had an extremely strange relationship. Qin Yu had an intuition that he would have a chance to help them in the future. At that time, he could take advantage of this opportunity to ask them to help Xiang Shui restore her human form. To them, this shouldn't be too difficult. "Can you say everything in one go?" Xiang Shui let out a long breath. She rolled her eyes at Qin Yu and then said, "Then let's agree. You can't go back on your word." Qin Yu nodded. "Don't worry, I will do what I say." He walked toward his room. "I will be cultivating for the next few days. If there's nothing important, don't disturb me." Bang! The door closed, and Qin Yu sat down cross-legged. With a flick of his sleeves, the air began to fluctuate, completely isolating him from the outside world. This was the strength to directly control the rules. Even if one's boundary was much higher than Qin Yu's, unless they could directly pierce through the rules and ignore their sealing power, it was impossible to hide from his senses. He lifted his hand, and the black stone appeared in front of him. Qin Yu took a deep breath, excitement in his eyes. He had originally only wanted to give it a try, but he never imagined that he would actually obtain it. If he wasn't wrong, then this stone should be an extremely rare primal chaos source stone. He lifted a hand and pointed a finger. A powerful aura erupted, smashing into the black stone. But not a single mark was left on its surface with Qin Yu's current realm. His all-out attack was no trifling matter. Yet, he couldn't damage it in the least. The hardness of this black stone could be called heaven-defying. But this wasn't the key point After pointing a finger, Chinyu didn't hesitate at all. He lifted a second finger, then a third, and then a fourth. His fingers moved like the wind, so fast that they left behind afterimages. In several breaths of time, Chinyu had pointed a total of 108 times. As the last finger landed, the silent and unresponsive black stone suddenly changed. The black stone trembled. Faint traces of blue light gushed out from within, dotted with golden stars. The blue light was beautiful and mysterious. Chinyu's eyes widened and a smile spread across his face. Ha ha! Primal Chaos Source Stone. It really is a Primal Chaos Source Stone. The 108 fingers he used just now was an extremely ancient appraisal technique that could detect Primal Chaos Source Stones. Now, he had confirmed that it was true. For him to obtain such a treasure so easily was simply a heaven-defying stroke of luck. It seems that although the Stronghold Master and Godly Dr. Yi are powerful, they don't know that this black stone is the legendary Primal Chaos Source Stone. Otherwise, they would never have given it to me. Chinyu suppressed his surging emotions, a burning heat in his eyes. Refine it. I must immediately refine it. The strength of the Primal Chaos Source Stone has already been activated. If it weren't for the isolation method I set up, I would have already been discovered. If this sort of precious treasure was discovered by others, it would surely draw in a great deal of trouble. Chinyu lifted a hand and slashed his finger. The flesh on his palm immediately split open and blood gushed out. But in the blink of an eye, the wound automatically healed. Chinyu frowned. After tearing open the wound again, he propped it up with his finger, not allowing it to regenerate. Blood constantly flowed out and fell onto the Primal Chaos Source Stone. It was like a giant dry sponge, absorbing all of the blood without spilling out. After 2 hours, the black Primal Chaos Source Stone's surface turned crimson red, looking like a blood-congealed jade. Only then did Chinyu let go of the wound and allow it to regenerate. However, the speed at which the wound healed was a bit slower. The massive amount of blood he lost caused his blood vitality to be severely damaged. And this was because Chinyu had the body of an ancient and possessed a sufficiently powerful body. If it were any other cultivator, just this amount of blood wouldn't have been enough to provide him. Even though his complexion paled, Chinyu didn't pause in his movements. This was because blood refining was only the first step in refining the Primal Chaos Source Stone. Next was soul ignition, wrapping the power of the soul around the stone and causing it to boil. Finally, it would turn into terrifying blood flames that would soften the Primal Chaos Source Stone into a liquid state. Then came the third step, absorption. And in the entire refining process, the second step was the most difficult. Using the power of the soul to cause one's blood vitality to boil was easy to accomplish. But if one wasn't careful, there was a chance they would be burned by the blood flames, causing great damage to the soul. Chinyu reached out a hand and carefully summoned the power of his soul. It turned into an invisible three-legged furnace that sucked in the blood-refined Primal Chaos Source Stone. Tao begets one begets two begets three, and three begets all things. Three represented the beginning of multiple extremes. It contained endless changes, and it also represented the most stable method of existence, because when things reached an extreme, they would move in reverse. Thus, after three, all things would be born. The refining method that Chinyu chose was left behind by some ancient and mighty existence within the fetal egg jade disc. With his current cultivation, he was just barely able to accomplish this. Within the three-legged furnace formed from the power of the soul, the blood-red Primal Chaos Source Stone spun. The blue aura and golden motes of light on its surface began to tumble even more fiercely. Gradually, signs of melting appeared on the surface of the Primal Chaos Source Stone. Then, a massive amount of blue gas wildly erupted, and the number of golden motes of light rapidly increased. It was like a spinning nebula with trillions of stars all over it. The Primal Chaos Source Stone began to melt. The blue gas and golden motes of light were its true form. Only after it completely melted could it be absorbed by a living being for its own use. Bang! Blood-red flames erupted. But they were restrained by the power of the soul so that they didn't leak outwards. Instead, the invisible three-legged furnace was clearly outlined. Within the blood-red flames, the primal chaos source stone rapidly melted. A massive amount of chaos energy gushed out, all of it a deep blue color and accompanied by a massive number of golden stars. Oh, luckily I directly obtained the memories from the fetal egg jade disc. It's like I've refined it countless times, otherwise it wouldn't have been so easy. If I wasn't careful, the blood-red flames would have injured my soul and caused a severe backlash. Yu was secretly startled. Although the refining process seemed simple, it actually contained tremendous dangers. An hour later, the final portion of the primal chaos source stone was smelted. Yu suddenly lifted his hands and pressed them down. A crack appeared on the three-legged furnace. Chaos energy surged out. Before it could dissipate into the world, Yu opened his mouth and fiercely sucked in. Like a dragon drinking water, the chaos energy was pulled into a long line, and all of it flew into Yu's mouth without any waste. At this time, it was like a furnace had ignited within his body. The searing heat scorched his flesh and blood. The intense pain almost made Yu think he would be torn to pieces. Even with his tenacious will, his mind was nearly pierced and his consciousness collapsed. Luckily, this feeling only lasted for a brief period of time. The pain receded like a tide and was replaced by an incomparably comfortable feeling. It was like he was soaking in a hot spring filled with the aura of life. He could clearly feel every inch of his flesh and blood emitting excited cheers. His body rapidly grew stronger, becoming stronger and stronger. After an unknown period of time, Yu suddenly opened his eyes. A sharp light flashed in the darkness, and arcs of electricity seemed to spread through the void. He lifted his hands and clenched his fists. This powerful feeling, Yu smiled. The strength of the primal chaos source stone was truly astonishing. But this wasn't all of his harvest this time. With a thought, faint blue lines appeared on Yu's exposed skin. They wove together, ancient and mysterious, emitting a mystical aura at every moment. After the primal chaos source stone solidified, it became indestructible. The blue lines that appeared on Yu's body were the manifestation of this strength. They possessed an incomparably potent defensive ability, as if Yu were wearing an invisible armor that covered his entire body. His defensive abilities rose dramatically. No, there's something else inside the primal chaos source stone. Yu frowned. He could sense that there was something hidden within his body. It was hidden very deeply. If it weren't for the fact that Yu's ancient race body was formidable, it would have been difficult to sense its existence. What is it? Come out for me. With a loud shout, Yu's two hearts began to beat at the same time. Blood energy surged throughout his body, tumbling about like a tide. It's hidden so deeply that I can't force it out. Humph, since that's the case, I'll make it vibrate even more intensely. Yu clenched his fists and fiercely looked up. At this moment, the feeling he gave off was that of a great beast roaring towards the heavens. Rumble, rumble. The blood energy within his body began to boil, roaring as it wildly flowed through his body. It was like a surging river, immediately echoing through the room. His body constantly shivered. His flesh and blood bulged up and fell back down. The blue lines condensed on the primal chaos source stone not only had the strength to resist external impacts, but could also suppress the eruption of strength within his body. Yu was startled. Luckily, he had already finished refining and absorbing the primal chaos source stone. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to erupt with blood energy to such a degree. Otherwise, his body wouldn't have been able to withstand the explosion. Now come out for me. With a loud roar, a blood-red rune slowly condensed between Yu's eyebrows. It was like a tadpole, constantly twisting and wriggling about. Unfortunately, This rune was suppressed by the power of his blood energy and couldn't escape. Grand Monarch City. City Lord Mansion. In a training chamber, Sophia was quietly lying on a soft recliner. Suddenly, her eyes flashed open, a dignified look in them. She actually sensed the curse I left in the fake divine stone. Did she personally do it? As she sensed with rapt attention, her complexion changed. No, it isn't expelling the curse, but forcing it to appear in my flesh and blood. Sophia leapt onto the ground, her face filled with surprise and joy. She never imagined that things would develop to this step. This was even better than her best expectations. Although she couldn't figure out why that woman would be so stupid to be able to sense the curse and force it to reveal itself, there was no one else besides her that could do this. No matter what, a heaven-sent opportunity was right in front of her. She absolutely could not miss it. She lifted her delicate, white, and pink front hooves and slammed them into the ground. The power of rules instantly descended within the training chamber, completely isolating this place from the outside world. Sophia looked up and screamed into the nothingness. Her short and sharp syllables fused into the nothingness. Through some unknown method, her voice was transmitted far into the distance. She was summoning her most powerful cursed soul to descend. She had to defeat that woman no matter the cost. Qin Yu's eyes flashed open. At the same time, his heart shrank. The throbbing in his chest caused his soul to instinctively scream. The aura of the curse. Qin Yu wasn't unfamiliar with this sort of strength. But the curse he felt this time was unprecedentedly terrifying. It was like this blood-red rune was connected to a terrifying world. It was like a great gate. Once it was opened, it would release a terrifying strength that could drag him into an endless abyss. This is bad, Qin Yu cried out. He lifted a hand and ruthlessly brought it down between his eyebrows. His fingertips formed hooks as he prepared to dig into his flesh and take away this rune. But at this time, his body froze. It was like the temperature in the air had suddenly dropped by tens of thousands of degrees, freezing everything. Cute little prey, since I have already arrived, do you still want to run away? You have no chance. Accept your fate and obediently become food in my stomach. Now that you mention it, I feel even hungrier. Let me have a sniff. Hiss, your soul is pure and powerful. It cannot be any more perfect. As he sucked in a breath, Qin Yu's body tensed. He felt as if his consciousness was being pulled out of his body by an invisible strength. Chapter 862. There was only Qin Yu in the room, but he could clearly feel that there was something else here that he couldn't see. Not only did his back feel cold and damp, but he could even hear the other's suppressed breathing that was filled with hunger and greed. Cursed life form. This was a strange life form that was gradually born from the accumulation of a pure and formidable curse power over the endless years. It didn't have a physical body and possessed a terrifying immunity to physical attacks. The only thing that could restrain and kill it was the power of the soul. And the cursed life form's favorite food was also the soul of a living being. Memories suddenly surged into Qin Yu's mind. His eyes deepened. Since he had been locked onto by the cursed life form, there was no other choice but to kill it. Suddenly, that cold and wet feeling spread out from his back. Like a viper leaving its nest, it wrapped around Qin Yu's body and slithered about. He could clearly feel the cursed life form's movements. But when he looked down, there was nothing there. Even when he reached out to touch it, there was nothing there. It was because of this that the cursed life form possessed a near physical immunity. Because in the strictest sense, it didn't exist in the same dimension as a living being. It was similar to folding space. But the cursed life form actually had the ability to cross through the barriers of space to kill. A cold and wet viper drilled into Qin Yu's mouth, nose, ears, and eyes. He screamed out in excitement. I can feel your fear. This is the most delicious ingredient. Don't worry, I will tear apart your soul bit by bit and savor it. Let alone Qin use current boundary. Even a true divine Tao existence would face a near-death situation once the cursed life form locked onto them and invaded their body. But this didn't mean that Qin Yu didn't have the strength to resist. His eyes were icy cold, and faint traces of dark golden light surged within them. What a delicious soul! It is simply inconceivable. After I swallow you, I am confident I can break through my shackles and evolve once more. I can't hold it in. I want to eat you. What is this, damn it? You want to suppress me? You must be dreaming, no? Impossible. What is this? How can you grasp such strength? I want to leave. I want to leave immediately. Screams rang out. The cursed life form seemed to discover something extremely terrifying and struggled to escape. Deep within Qin Yu's eyes, a dark golden light suddenly erupted. Humph! It's too late to run now. Since you've delivered yourself to me, I won't be polite. Within Qin Yu's soul space, a black altar phantom appeared. Although it was only a thin layer that could be blown away by a gentle breeze, it still emitted an incomparably ancient aura. It was invisible and intangible. The cursed life form that had broken and was now imprisoned within the black altar phantom, gradually revealing its true form. 7 tentacles covered in mucus intertwined with each other, their ends fused into a meatball that looked like a squid. If one were to kill me, then the cursed life form would be marked by the cursed life form. It did not have a mouth, but it could roar loudly. I am the direct descendant of His Excellency, the Cursed Eye. I have been blessed since the day I was born. If you dare to kill me, His Excellency the Cursed, I will mark you. At that the cursed life form will be again, the I, that you will, the cursed life, the cursed will the be become. If you're a you, I you, 111. That, but you, in. The cuttlefish's eyes widened. You aren't afraid of the cursed life form? Qin Yu's soul was expressionless. If it wants to come, then come. Bang! The black altar shook. Faint traces of black energy rose up, gathering above it and turning into a black skull. Its empty eye sockets flickered with crimson soul flames. A cold and horrifying aura immediately spread out. In the blink of an eye, the entire surface of his soul space was covered in a thin layer of black ice. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. The black ice on the surface of his soul shattered. He stepped forwards and looked at the black skull. He lightly said, "This is the offering. Jage, it's been many, many years, and you've finally contacted me once more. But your aura right now seems very weak." The black skull moved. It looked down at Qin Yu's soul, the blood red in its eye sockets becoming even deeper. Qin Yu's heart trembled. Beneath the gaze of the black skull, an instinctive fear rose in his heart, as if his thoughts would freeze. He was well aware that this black skull was the projection of some terrifying existence far away. Even a single thought from it contained a terrifying strength. At the very least, swallowing him would be an incomparably simple matter. Qin Yu's complexion didn't change. His voice was icy cold as he lightly said, "Life forms of the material world are different from you. There's a cycle of evolution and samsara. What you feel now might not be true. What is it, Great Master Black Skeleton? Are you prepared to tear up the contract between us?" The black skull was silent. It stared at Qin Yu, as if judging whether his words were true or false. After several breaths of time, it let out a low chuckle. "You and I have signed a transaction contract, so we are close partners. As the Great Master of Black Skeleton of the Black Skeleton world, I certainly won't do something like tear up the contract. Jage, then let us complete this transaction." It lowered its head and looked at the cuttlefish imprisoned in the center of the altar. Cursed creature, what a good material. Although it's a little weak, it's incomparably pure. Oh, I smell a familiar scent from it. It's the scent of the eye of curse. The black skull let out another strange laugh. You life forms of the material world are naturally weak against the power of curses. Are you sure you want to sacrifice this cursed creature? You should know that the Eye of Curse is an existence that holds grudges. Moreover, if it descends, even I, the great master of Black Skeleton, don't want to have a conflict with such a powerful curse creature. Qin Yu said coldly, life forms of the material world are indeed weak against the power of curses, but we do have the power to resist it. Otherwise, the material world would have long been occupied by cursed creatures. If the Eye of Curse really descends, I think it won't be long before we can make another transaction. Jajage, I like your decision. This is the mentality that a true powerhouse should have. The master of Black Skeleton laughed. Then I'll accept your sacrifice. The cuttlefish screamed in fear. No. The inside of the black altar suddenly collapsed. It wasn't Qin Yu's soul space itself, but a dimensional channel that connected directly to an unknown space. Shio, the struggling cuttlefish was sucked in. The master of Black Skeleton looked over. Oh, it's really a good taste. Then, my contract partner, what do you want? Qin Yu said, the power of the soul, the purest power of the soul. The master of Black Skeleton chuckled. You are indeed as shrewd as ever. The power of the soul refined by the great master of Black Skeleton is something that everyone needs. Then, my close contract partner, the master of Black Skeleton, will satisfy your request. The skull laughed strangely and suddenly opened its mouth. A burning black flame appeared. Although it was dancing with flames, it didn't emit any heat. Instead, it gave off a warm feeling like water. Qin Yu's soul instinctively gave birth to a great desire. He wanted to swallow down this mass of flame because it was refined from pure soul strength. If this small mass of flame in front of him was refined from the souls of ordinary humans, it would require at least 10 million people to refine. Okay, the transaction is complete. Qin Yu reached out and took the soul flame. The master of Black Skeleton was silent for a moment. He suddenly said, aren't you using it yourself? My close contract partner. Qin Yu shook his head. This has nothing to do with the great master of Black Skeleton. GGG, although what you said is right, I feel a strange aura in your soul space. The master of Black Skeleton stared at Qin Yu. If you want to awaken them, I might be able to help. This is free of charge. No need, Qin Yu said coldly. The master of Black Skeleton didn't hide it anymore. He directly said, the great master of Black Skeleton is interested in the little thing in your soul space. If you are willing to trade, I can pay you 10 times the soul power. I refuse the trade. Maybe 20 times can change your mind. Qin Yu was expressionless. Master of Black Skeleton, you should go back. GGG. All right, it seems that you really don't want to trade, but I will keep this suggestion. If you change your mind in the future, you can summon me at any time. The master of Black Skeleton laughed. The black altar trembled slightly and was about to disappear. But at this moment, a black gas suddenly seeped out and went straight for Qin Yu. Oomph. With a sneer, Qin Yu raised his hand and clenched it. The black gas suddenly collapsed. At this moment, the aura that erupted from Qin Yu's soul was so powerful that it made people tremble. You crossed through space and time to descend, making me unable to control my own power. To apologize, this soul power contained in this divine sense can be called an extra gift. GGG, I look forward to your next summon. Ha! The altar phantom dissipated, but the black skeleton remained. However, the soul flames burning in its eye sockets had been completely extinguished. The cold expression on Qin Yu's soul suddenly disappeared. He trembled violently. An incomparably weak feeling surged out, causing his consciousness to go black. The powerful soul power that he had unleashed just now was because he had borrowed some kind of secret soul technique from the Jade Egg to scare away the master of Black Serpent. Otherwise, this cruel and cunning creature from another world might really have broken the contract. The aura of the purple moon, blue sun, and cosmic sea crossbell was actually able to make the master of Black Skeleton probe them. It was clear that he was extremely tempted. After a long time, Qin Yu's weak feeling began to subside. He lifted his hand and sealed the black skeleton away. Then, he looked at the quietly burning soul flames. In his weakened state, the desire of his soul was even stronger. Qin took a deep breath and suppressed the urge to absorb them. In order to help him fuse with the ancient's heart and grasp it, the purple moon, blue sun, and cosmic sea crossbell had exhausted their strength and fallen into a deep slumber. Now this soul power would be used to awaken them. This wasn't just gratitude. Realistically speaking, once the three beauties awakened, his strength would also rise. Chapter 863. The burning black soul flames suddenly divided into three, as if they were being guided by an invisible strength. Each of them poured into a different area. Hum, hum, hum. The interior of his soul space trembled. The purple moon, blue sun, and cosmic sea cross bell appeared, directly absorbing the soul flames. Seeing this, Qin relaxed a little. He smiled. It really was possible. The first to wake up was the cosmic sea cross bell. It cried out in surprise and joy. I'm alive again. This is too great. At this moment, the dim purple moon suddenly emitted a halo of light that flowed on the surface of the moon shadow. Qin Yu's eyes flashed, and a dignified look appeared in his eyes. As he looked at this halo of light, it seemed as if he had discovered something else. Before he could observe more, blue light erupted. The silent blue sun was restored to its vitality and began to release its own fluctuations of strength. At this time, the light of the purple moon and blue sun wove together, fusing together. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. This is a dark golden light surged in the depths of his eyes, instantly piercing through the surface and reaching the essential truth. The light of the purple moon and blue sun fused together, forming a strange rule. It was different from the great Tao of the heavens and earth, as if it were artificially created. And creating rules represented an unimaginable level, one that far surpassed the so-called divine realm. Moreover, in Qin Yu's eyes, there seemed to be an even more astonishing secret hidden within this rule. Qin Yu had a clear intuition that he was already standing on the edge of unraveling this secret. As long as he wanted to, he could unravel it at any time. Hesitation flashed in his eyes. Qin Yu already knew that there was a connection between the purple moon and blue sun, and that there were many other secrets hidden within. If this were before, he wouldn't have hesitated at all. He would have directly unraveled this rule and found out the true origins of the purple moon and blue sun. But now, after experiencing the ancient's heart, the purple moon and blue sun had proven themselves with their actions. Qin Yu was willing to believe them. Since they weren't willing to say it on their own initiative, they must have their reasons. Qin Yu shouldn't make a decision without their consent. Suddenly, a fluctuation spread out from his soul. This was the jade embryo egg that had fused into it. In the next moment, the rule in front of Qin Yu seemed to sense something and unsealed itself. Golden specks of light broke down from the laws, and the shadows of the laws quickly blurred. Because these specks of light were part of the laws, they also represented the secrets they contained. As if they were attracted by something, these golden motes of light flew towards Qin Yu. Although they couldn't be seen with the naked eye, they could still sense them as they landed on his body. It felt as if drops of cool autumn rain were sprinkling on the body and then fusing into the flesh and blood. Qin Yu's eyes widened and a look of shock crossed his face. But soon, he immersed himself in it and subconsciously closed his eyes. Amidst the light of the purple moon and the blue sun, the man-made rules that appeared contained a complete inheritance. It was left behind by a great figure in ancient times to prevent the inheritance from being severed before he carried out an extremely dangerous task. After a long time, Qin Yu opened his eyes. At this time, a phenomenon appeared. A purple moon hung high in his left eye, and a sun blazed in his right eye. The left eye was the moon, and the right eye was the sun. Shua, shua. The two figures bowed at the same time, their long dresses outlining their perfect bodies. Servant Linglong Ziyue and Servant Seng Nanxing re-greet the Divine Lord. Their voices were filled with excitement that couldn't be suppressed. Qing took a deep breath. The sun and moon phenomena in his eyes faded away. He glanced at the kneeling purple moon and blue Sunday. Although his memories weren't complete, he knew where they came from. In ancient times, it could even be traced back to the Great Desolate Era. In the endless void, there were trillions of galaxies shining brightly. Among them, there were the Great Yin and Great Yang stars that revolved around the Great Desolate Era. They controlled the flow of black and dark, controlling the Yin and Yang energies of the world. Above the Great Yin and Great Yang stars, there were star palaces that stood tall. They possessed ancient inheritances and were powerful enough to look down on all others. However, as the river of time flowed, for some unknown reason, the inheritances of the Great Yin and Great Yang palaces underwent a great change. Soon, they vanished without a trace, and all of their descendants vanished from sight. Purple Moon's name was Linglong. She was the master of Great Yin Star Palace. Blue Sun's name was Sang Nanqing. She was the master of Great Yang Star Palace. Of course, it was more accurate to say that after the masters of the two palaces perished, after the endless years passed, they were the last remnants of their undying true spirits. Qin Yu shook his head. "I am not your divine lord." Purple Moon said, "No, there is no way we would mistake your aura for someone else. Even though tens of millions of years have passed, it is still the same." Blue Sun prostrated herself on the ground. "Perhaps you haven't fully recovered your memories, but there is no doubt about your identity. Only the Supreme Divine Lord can directly activate the inheritance rules. Divine Lord, you have finally returned." Qin Yu fell silent. He could faintly guess that the Divine Lord they spoke of had already dissipated from the world, leaving behind only a mark that was fused into the jade embryo egg. It was because of this mark that the inheritance rules had been triggered, causing a misunderstanding between them. Should he continue explaining? When it came to the jade embryo egg, Qin Yu couldn't say anything more. He feared he wouldn't be able to convince them. His thoughts raced several times. Then he said, "Rise." "Yes, Your Excellency, Divine Lord." Purple Moon and Blue Sun respectfully stood to the side. Their eyes occasionally fell on him, filled with awe and excitement. But they were far too weak. Even though they had awoken with the help of their soul flames, their emotions were still wildly fluctuating. The surface of their bodies, Purple Moon and Blue Sun, flashed as if they would extinguish at any moment. Qin Yu furrowed his eyebrows. "Rest first. If there is anything else we can discuss later." Purple Moon and Blue Sun obediently agreed without any hesitation. It was like everything Qin Yu said represented a supreme will that they couldn't defy. Shua, shua. Their figures flashed, each fusing into their main bodies. In the next moment, the Purple Moon slowly rose up. As if it were being pulled by an invisible force, it fell into the center of Qin Yu's soul space. And at the same time, the Blue Sun rapidly dimmed, like a phantom dissipating. In the next moment, it appeared in his Dantian Sea. Qin Yu was startled. This was because he could clearly feel that as the Purple Moon and Blue Sun appeared, a strange force field suddenly appeared, covering him within. Within this force field, it was like he had jumped out of the world. No, this wasn't the right way to describe it. The more appropriate way to describe it was that he had escaped from the omnipresent net of rules that existed between the heavens and earth. In the boundless universe, as long as one opened their spiritual wisdom, as time passed, they would step onto the road of cultivation on their own initiative, constantly pursuing their own limits. As their cultivation boundary rose, they would control an even more terrifying strength. Their lifespan would rise with it, even reaching a boundary where they could coexist with the sun and moon. But this still wasn't their limit. Or it could be said that there was still an unreachable distance from their limit. This was because they were still within the rules. Even if they lived an eternal life, there would still come a time when their lifespan would run out and they would turn into a pile of rotten bones. Their life of hard cultivation would ultimately be for naught. To truly peak life forms, existences that stood at the peak of the heavens and earth, they were constantly shackled. And what shackled them were the rules of the world that allowed them to possess a terrifying strength. To rely on these rules and also want to break them, this was the painful situation that all peak life forms faced. They would never have imagined that a life form that was so weak in their eyes that it could be ignored would actually be able to accomplish what they yearned for in their dreams. To transcend the rules and truly obtain great freedom, to soar through the highest heavens and 10 earths, to no longer be shackled by the rules. Chinyu was shaken. Although he didn't understand his current state, he felt unprecedentedly relaxed, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Although his strength and boundary hadn't changed from before, Chinyu believed that if he were to attack now, every punch, kick, or any other supernatural power or magic art would rise by more than a level. It was like in this state, he had escaped from some burden that he had to bear. Hum. Suddenly, this stable force field began to fluctuate. Chinyu was startled. He regained his clarity of mind from this feeling. Then, he discovered that the purple moon in his soul space and the blue sun in his Dantian Sea were moving at a relatively stable speed. This feeling was like the samsara of the sun rising and moon setting. And at this time, the fluctuations produced by the force field were caused by the sun and moon revolving. But this didn't harm the force field itself. Rather, as it fluctuated, faint traces of the outside world's aura were slowly sucked in. This was a strength that Chinyu had never come into contact with before. It was incomparably weak, and if it weren't for the existence of the force field, he wouldn't have been able to sense it. But soon, Chinyu's eyes widened and his thoughts nearly came to a halt. This was because he discovered that the use of this strength was to strengthen oneself and help one's life level rise. What was this strength in this world? How could such a heaven-defying strength exist? When all living beings in the world cultivated, in essence, it was a way to strengthen oneself and constantly transform. And this sort of process was to promote one's life level. This was because in this world, there was no such thing as fairness. There were powerful races that were born with tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands, or even millions of years of life. They didn't need to cultivate it all. As long as they grew to adulthood, they would possess an inconceivably formidable strength. There were even some special life forms that, to them, life and death were only a process of slumber and awakening. They had never felt the fear and anxiety of death. They stood high and aloof, indifferently watching the millions and millions of worlds around them, watching those lowly and weak life forms that struggled to survive. Chinyu closed his eyes, crazily perceiving this strength. But it was like dust floating in the air. He could sense it through the sunlight, but he couldn't feel it at all. But this strength truly existed. Although his absorption speed was slow, it continued to slowly and steadily fuse into his body, constantly increasing Chinyu's life level. Crazy. He had to be crazy. Chinyu knew better than anyone what this represented. As long as the sun and moon force field continued to attract this strength, then as long as he could live long enough, he would definitely grow into a terrifying existence that would make the entire world tremble. Without any reason, Chinyu suddenly thought of the sun and moon stars that revolved around the great desolate world countless years ago. Was it possible that they were some incomparably powerful life form that used them to absorb the mysterious strength of the heavens and earth to cultivate? Just as this thought appeared, Chinyu couldn't help but feel his scalp tingle. A faint shivering feeling rose up from the depths of his heart and spread throughout his body. In particular, at this moment, he could clearly feel that as the purple moon and blue sun revolve around them, their auras gradually stabilized and became much stronger than before. Although it was only an extremely small portion, so small that it could be ignored compared to the time it took for them to revolve in the force field. This result was astonishing enough. If this were superimposed over the endless years, What would happen if it were 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even 100,000 years, or 1,000,000 years? Perhaps the small and weak purple moon and blue sun really could grow to the point where they could compare to the sun and moon stars. After a long time, Chinyu took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the tumbling in his heart. He suddenly realized that the inheritance he obtained was far more formidable than he had imagined. The one who left behind this inheritance rule and secretly controlled the sun and moon stars, the ancient almighty being that existed in ancient times, must have reached an inconceivable level of strength. Chapter 864. Chinyu couldn't help but think about what this almighty being had experienced, that he couldn't escape the fate of turning to ash. But soon he restrained these thoughts. This was because no matter what it was far from what he could touch right now. There was still a great disparity between him and that level. As one's cultivation increased, one's lifespan increased, and one's horizons were constantly broadened. The world was like a mountain hidden in the clouds, revealing new surprises every time. It made one maintain a sufficient amount of respect for the world at all times. At this moment, Chinyu suddenly frowned. He flicked his sleeves, and the door opened automatically. Xiang Shui was startled outside. She quickly said, "Chinyu, there's a strange old man outside. He's been crouching on a tree for a long time, and he's been looking at our yard. I'm a bit scared." Chinyu's heart chilled. He nodded to indicate that he understood and calmly walked out. Sure enough, the strange old man crouching on the tree was Miracle Dr. Yi. Although he had been careful enough and had borrowed the power of rules to seal off the aura inside and outside, facing this terrifying Miracle Dr. Yi, Chinyu still didn't have absolute confidence. Moreover, with his current appearance, it was likely he had already sensed something. His thoughts raced. "Yo, boy, if you don't come out, I won't be able to resist bursting in to see what you're up to." Miracle Dr. Ye's eyes fell on Chinyu. This person was still the same as before, and there was no change in his senses, but there seemed to be some inexplicable changes. As he thought of this, his eyes became brighter and brighter. They were like shining white knives that could pierce through a person from head to toe. Chinyu bowed, revealing a look of panic. "Miracle Dr. Yi, there is a problem with the stone that the Stronghold Master gave me. There is a terrifying being sealed inside, and I accidentally let it out." At this moment, he spoke of the appearance of the cursed being. Of course, he had embellished it so that no information would be exposed. Miracle Dr. Ye's complexion changed. Cursed being. His eyes became sharp and his solemn face became solemn. "Chinyu, are you sure you didn't make a mistake?" As he spoke, he secretly activated a secret technique to confirm Chinyu's aura. Sure enough, there was a cursed aura lingering above his soul. Although it was faint, Miracle Dr. Yi frowned and exclaimed, "The cursed eye." Chinyu let out an ah, his face full of anxiety. That's right. It said that it's a direct descendant of the Eye of Curse, and if I kill it, I'll be marked by the Eye of Curse." "Miracle Dr. Yi, what's going on?" Divine Dr. Ye's figure moved, leaping into the courtyard, and said in a deep voice, "Compared to this old man is more curious about why you're still alive." Although it sounded cruel and heartless, it was the truth. With your current strength, there was no way you could resist the slaughter of a cursed creature. Chinyu, you must give this old man a reasonable explanation. Chinyu revealed a trace of hesitation. But as he sensed Miracle Dr. Ye's cold and grim aura, his complexion paled, and he quickly said, I'll speak. He paused for a moment. "Many years ago, I accidentally picked up a black bone. Through it, I signed a trade contract with a powerful being called the Master of Black Viper in a distant world." "Master of Black Viper?" Miracle Dr. Yi thought for a moment, but he didn't seem to get anything out of it. "You're saying that you borrowed the power of the Master of Black Viper to kill this cursed creature today?" Chinyu nodded repeatedly. "Yes, that's it." "Oomph. Chinyu, you actually dared to lie to this old man. As you said, an existence that could casually kill the cursed creature just by sending a projection through space and time. Its true strength is far beyond your imagination. Why would such an existence sign a trade contract with you? I'm afraid that the moment you established a connection, it would devour you without hesitation. Chinyu thought that this old fellow's guess was right. If he hadn't been prepared, the Master of Black Viper might have really done that. That's right. The Master of Black Viper was indeed very angry back then. He asked me where I came from. That black bone seemed to be very precious, but after he flew into a rage, he didn't kill me. He only left a sentence saying that he could summon his projection and left. Miracle Dr. Ye's eyes flickered. Could it be a passive summon contract? The black bone that Chinyu spoke of was a medium for the Master of Black Viper to sign a contract with a powerhouse. It was unknown why this boy obtained it. Although this sort of thing was rare, in the eyes of the experienced and knowledgeable Miracle Dr. Yi, it was still possible. Of course, more importantly, Chinyu's words perfectly explained everything that he had sensed. For example, the cursed creature, the projection that crossed space and time. From the looks of it, he was very honest and didn't hide anything. That's right, this old fellow had already sensed the fluctuations but didn't reveal anything. Instead, he was waiting for Chinyu to speak first. If Chinyu's words didn't satisfy him, Miracle Doctor, you wouldn't hesitate to kill him on the spot. This matter concerned the young Mrs. Future, and he couldn't allow any hidden dangers to exist. But now, it seemed that Chinyu didn't have any problems. Compared to the masses, he was just a relatively lucky little cultivator. Cursed creature, this is a bit interesting. Miracle Dr. Yi glanced at Chinyu. He knew that Chinyu was hiding something, but everyone had their own secrets. He didn't want to get to the bottom of it. Chin boy, you are a smart person. I hope that you will always be smart. He turned and left. After turning his back, he frowned slightly and revealed a dignified look. Xiang Shui had a worried expression. Chinyu, I'm fine. Chinyu took a deep breath and calmly said. Xiang Shui hesitated. She nodded. Grand Monarch City. In a chamber within the City Lord Mansion, Sophia opened her eyes. She stuffily coughed, and blood flowed out from the corners of her lips. In the next moment, large swathes of blue and purple lines appeared on the surface of her snow-white body, weaving together to form a horrifying ghost face. This ghost face fiercely struggled, as if it wanted to break free from her flesh and blood. In the quiet chamber, the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves filled the air. Curse backlash. Sophia's eyes were filled with anger. She lifted a hoof and pressed it between her eyebrows. A mark instantly appeared, releasing a rainbow-colored light. This light flashed and instantly spread to Sophia's entire body, completely enveloping it. The ghost face angrily roared, but in the end, it was suppressed and submerged into her flesh and blood. Hoo-hoo, Sophia gasped for breath. Because of anger and fear, her face was pale. The cursed creature had been killed. Only like this would she be able to withstand such a terrifying backlash. It had to be known that this cursed creature was a life-protecting treasure bestowed upon her by the High Ancestor during her coming-of-age ceremony. It was a direct descendant of the Eye of the Curse and possessed tremendous potential for growth. Now that it had been killed, the Eye of the Curse would never give up. She had used her life mark to barely suppress the eruption of the backlash, but this could only last for a short period of time. Unless she returned as soon as possible and asked the High Ancestor to help, if the backlash erupted once more, her body wouldn't be able to withstand it. Damn it! Sophia clenched her teeth. Everything was originally under her control. She had grasped the perfect opportunity and even had a chance to win in a single strike. But in the blink of an eye, the situation had completely deteriorated. She had been forced into an absolute disadvantage. That hateful woman, just how did she do this? Sophia was well aware of just how terrifying the cursed creature was. Even in a normal state, it would be difficult for her to contend with it with her level of life, much less in her current state. Could that woman have hidden some other methods? That shouldn't be the case. The information she obtained ahead of time didn't mention this. She mustn't panic. Sophia forced herself to calm down. She thought for a while, and her eyes suddenly lit up. The cursed creature was extremely terrifying. Even if that woman successfully killed it, she definitely wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. In other words, she was currently at her weakest. The longer she delayed, the more disadvantageous the situation would be for her. Moreover, the backlash of the curse was only temporarily suppressed. She originally needed to defeat her opponent in the shortest time possible and obtain victory. She had to change her plan. Sophia's eyes flickered. Cursed creature. The well-built village master was still wearing that pink dress that was tightly wrapped around her body, making her look rather strange. Now that she heard Miracle Dr. Ye's report, she frowned tightly. Her big face, which was covered in muscles, suddenly had a hint of anger. Master Yi, are you sure? Miracle Dr. Yi said, I detected the aura of the eye of the curse on Qin Yu. Combined with what I sensed earlier, I can confirm that he didn't lie about this. The village master sighed. As expected, the information that I couldn't confirm before is true. She has a protective cursed creature on her body. Miracle Dr. Yi said, hee, but now it's already dead. This old man's eyes weren't wrong. That Qin Yu kid is a talent. He can actually kill such a terrifying thing. He paused for a moment before continuing. With a cursed creature protecting her body, in order to avoid being corroded by the curse, she must sign a contract. The one in the Great King City probably isn't feeling well now. His tone was one of gloating. Master Yi, things aren't that simple. The village master stood up and walked to the window. As you said, if she suffers the backlash of the curse, would she be willing to sit and wait for death? I'm afraid she'll make a move soon. Miracle Dr. Yi sneered. So what? Could it be that Miss is afraid of her? I'm not afraid of her, but our luck this time is too bad. The opponent's identity has an overall advantage. If we fight head-on, it'll be very troublesome for us. I'm afraid our previous preparations won't be needed. Miracle Dr. Yi frowned. That's true. Miss isn't ready yet, right? The village master nodded. She's still not ready, but if the situation is dire, we can barely use it. Now we just have to see what she does. Sophia privately hosted a banquet for the top nobles from the imperial city, the direct bloodline of the Oba family, the third in line of succession, Ola's. The entire mayor's mansion was bustling with activity because of this. Exquisite dishes were constantly being served on the sumptuous and exquisite dining table. In the banquet hall, the mayor and Mr. Ola's were chatting happily. The banquet lasted for a full 6 hours. When it was over, the mayor invited Mr. Ola's into his study to discuss some matters. As the matter was confidential, the many Obum nobles who accompanied the banquet retreated, bowing respectfully before leaving. Not long after, Sophia and Mr. Ola's, who were discussing confidential matters, lay on the bed, their bodies intertwined as they panted. The mayor, whose face was flushed and eyes blurred, seemed to have sensed something. He hugged the person on top of him tightly, moaning even more passionately. Ola's sped up madly, and with a low growl, he completed another round of full power. With a face full of comfort and satisfaction, he lazily slumped onto the soft, delicate body beneath him. Of course, this delicate body was a judgment made from the eyes of the Obum race. It was just that at this moment, Mr. Ola's, who was completely immersed in pleasure, did not notice that the blurriness in the mayor's eyes had dissipated, revealing an icy coldness. She raised her hand, and one of her front hooves shifted rapidly, revealing a woman's perfect palm. Fair, soft, and exquisite, it landed lightly on Ola's body without the slightest hint of anger. Bang! Like a balloon that had burst, bright red blood mixed with pieces of internal organs landed on the mayor. Mr. Ola's, whose eyes were wide open, gurgled twice before he finally stopped breathing. There's an assassin. Chapter 865. Sophia decisively shook off all suspicions about her. Although she had already put on her clothes when the crowd arrived, it was not difficult to guess what had just happened with her flushed face and messy body. Of course, more importantly, Mr. Ola's from the Imperial City was now lying naked on the bed, and there was a strange smell in the air. Because of Mr. Ola's high status, even with Sophia's identity, she had gone through a strict inspection. The facts proved that they had really been in close contact, and there was crucial evidence left in her body. Therefore, the Aurora family of the Imperial City agreed with Sophia's words about a human assassin after some thought. What's more, there was now a bright and elegant palm print on the back of the dead Mr. Ola's, which was definitely from a human woman. Finally, the Ola's nobles who had rushed over from the Imperial City quickly came to an agreement with the various parties of the Imperial City. The one who killed Mr. Ola's was the human assassin who had barged into the residence of the city lord and killed Butler Darafi. The residents of the city lord had already begun investigating this matter, and now they had some clues. Although they could not confirm who had ordered the assassin, they could roughly pinpoint his location. Little Fragrant Hill. Little Fragrant Hill was actually not small at all, so strictly speaking, the name was not very appropriate. It was mostly a north-south mountain range that stretched for more than 100,000 miles. There were countless peaks of various sizes, as well as valleys and thousands of wide rivers. It could completely be seen as an independent country. There were billions of creatures living in this country. Other than the various demonic beasts, which were the most numerous, there were also the humans who had fled here to survive in order to avoid the persecution and pursuit of the Opum race. Of course, there were also some Opum villages here, but they had left their homes and fled deep into the mountains, often with extremely tragic pasts. Once they were discovered by the Opum from the outside world, their fates would only be worse than those of the human race. When the malicious intent from the Imperial City began to spread, the news spread in Little Fragrant Hill at an alarming speed. A human assassin had killed a noble of the Imperial City, and the Opum race had taken revenge. Unless the murderer was handed over, they would launch a thunderous bloodbath for revenge. The ninth Serene Peak was located in the depths of the small Fragrant Hill. Before the news came, the Fort Master had already confirmed it through some unknown channel. Miracle Dr. Yi was silent for a while. Then he suddenly sneered. This miss of the Bullet family is really willing to do anything in order to win. I've heard before that the Bullet family isn't purely human, but mixed with barbarian blood. I didn't believe it before, but now I'm afraid it's true. Of course, he could tell at a glance who had killed Olis. The Fort Master's expression was calm. It's impossible to let the matter rest so easily that a top-notch noble Obum has been killed. Although the ninth Serene Peak is hidden in the depths of Little Fragrant Hill, it will be involved sooner or later. Once I'm discovered, she will gather all her forces to attack the ninth Serene Peak. Miracle Dr. Yi fell silent. His eyebrows furrowed together for several breaths of time before relaxing. Miss, there is no need to worry. With me here, no matter how many people the Obum race sends out, I can make them all stay behind. His tone was calm, but there was a hint of malice in it. Old Yi, the Fort Master glared at him, a bit of anger in her eyes. Unfortunately, with her current appearance, it was quite nauseating. Strictly speaking, I've already broken the rules by dragging you here. If I'm discovered, it's possible that I'll lose. Miracle Dr. Ye's complexion changed. I almost forgot. I can't be exposed, so what do I do now? He clenched his teeth and angrily said, Now that I think about it, it's all that boy Qin Yu's fault. Why did he kill off that cursed life form for no reason? Not only did he cause trouble for himself, but he also forced the Bullet family's girl into a desperate situation. He could only take a risk and risk his life. If he had just a bit more time, with missed preparations, victory would have been easy. The Fort Master revealed a helpless expression. Old Yi, you were the one who recommended Qin Yu, okay? She glanced at the awkward expression of the Fort Master and didn't continue speaking. All right, let's get down to business. Although the current situation is a bit difficult, it doesn't mean that we have no cards to play. The entire array formation hasn't been laid down yet, but if we pay a price, we can just barely use it. I hope that we can force Obum to retreat. The Fort Master's eyes brightened. Old Yi, don't forget that if there is no accident, time is on our side. As long as we can persist long enough, We might be able to win even without facing him head-on. Olgi hesitated. Miss words are correct, but once we forcefully activate the array, you will be fixed here and won't be able to take a single step out of 9 Nether Peak. The fort master smiled. If we don't do anything, we will be found sooner or later. We might as well give it a try. Moreover, I have confidence in my array formation. They won't be able to break through it so easily. At the edge of Little Fragrant Mountain, there was a small human settlement. Flames burned corpses, and the air was filled with the smell of cruelty and cruelty. Now, this settlement had been thoroughly destroyed. All life that they saw had been killed without hesitation. Dark red droplets of blood dripped down the snow-white, ice-cold blade and shattered on the ground. Wearing a helmet and completely covered in black iron armor, Obum sheathed his long saber with an indifferent look in his eyes. Let's continue. As the armor moved, the armor pieces collided and rubbed against each other, producing clicking sounds. The Obums that were scattered in the village to hunt the fish that escaped the net quickly gathered together, forming a black torrent. Like a huge python, they continued advancing into the depths of the forest. Behind a fallen door, 2 small figures were hugging each other. The boy was slightly older, and he covered the girl's mouth to prevent her from making a sound. However, the scene in front of them was like a tidal wave that struck their hearts and minds. Their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Only when these murderous Obums left did the boy release his hand. The girl in his arms cried out, "Brother, don't speak. Let's leave this place quickly." The boy pushed open the door and turned to look at the collapsed house. His eyes were bloodshot, and tears flowed down uncontrollably. Just now, he had heard his parents' screams before they died. He pulled his sister and kowtowed to the ruins before getting up and leaving quickly. Outside the village, within the black torrent of Obums, an Obum sniffed and sneered. "Captain, 2 humans are still alive. They're leaving." As he spoke, he raised his front hoof and pointed in the direction that the siblings had escaped. Under the helmet, the captain's eyes were cold. He retracted his gaze and said calmly, "Go and kill them." "Yes." The Obum who reported laughed excitedly. He turned around and moved his feet, breaking away from the team and giving chase. The taste of human boys and girls was simply too delicious. If he moved quickly, he would be able to have a good meal. "Brother, there's a black-armored Obum." The younger sister, who was following behind, occasionally turned around and screamed. Her face instantly turned pale. The boy shouted loudly. As his flesh and bones cracked, his body suddenly expanded, and his speed suddenly increased. Quick run. Every black-armored Obum was an executioner whose hands were stained with the blood of humans. They were extremely powerful, and they were not people they could fight against. Besides running, there was no other way. But soon, despair appeared in the eyes of the siblings. They were already doing their best, but the distance between them was rapidly shrinking. "Sister, run." The elder brother suddenly threw the girl away. He stopped and turned around. He stared at the black-armored Obum that was howling towards him and let out a bestial roar. "Come on, you monsters!" The black-armored Obum laughed loudly. "A courageous human boy will definitely taste even more delicious. I've decided to leave you behind to eat. Today, none of you can even think of escaping." At this moment, he suddenly felt some changes in his body. Then, the terrified human boy revealed an expression of shock, followed by ecstasy. "Oh, what did this boy see? Or is he trying to trick me into turning around? What a childish boy. Does he think that the brave and skilled Obum warrior Dodora will be fooled?" Puff! There was a dull sound. Or, to be more precise, it was the sound of countless dull sounds overlapping each other. Because it was too short and occurred at the same time, it sounded like a single sound. The black-armored Obum's vision turned black, and his consciousness instantly fell into darkness. Before he died, his last thought was, "What happened to me?" The ground was covered in minced meat. The human boy swallowed his saliva. He looked at the minced meat that had been easily torn apart by the fog and turned into a pool of blood on the ground. A trace of fear appeared in his eyes. He didn't know what the fog was or why it had appeared, but if it wasn't for it, he would probably be dead by now. The boy bowed towards the fog and didn't say anything. He turned around and chased after his sister. The two of them continued to flee for their lives. However, what the siblings didn't know was that the fog that had suddenly appeared and killed the black-armored Obum wasn't limited to what they saw. For some unknown reason, the entire little fragrant hill was suddenly covered in fog. This fog looked extremely ordinary, but possessed extremely terrifying abilities. It was like the sharpest blade that could easily tear apart the sturdy armor of the Obum warriors, as well as the powerful bodies that they were so proud of. But apart from that, the fog was harmless. That's right, the fog only targeted the Obums who had barged in. No other living being would trigger its attack. For a time, the Obums who had barged into Little Fragrant Hill and were clamoring to take revenge by slaughtering millions suffered heavy casualties. In the great King City, news of the casualties at the front line spread. The Aurora family was furious, and everyone trembled under the fury of the top-notch nobles. If they had been doubtful about the search for the culprit in Little Fragrant Hill before, then they were now certain that the culprit was here. This super formation, which was targeted at the Obum race and covered the entire Little Fragrant Hill, spanning over 50,000 kilometers, could only be set up by the human race's top-notch formation experts. Other than assassinating Aurora, they couldn't think of a reason why such a powerful human expert would appear in Little Fragrant Hill. At this moment, no one noticed a flash of joy in the eyes of Sophia, who had a sorrowful expression. "Found you." Sophia had done a detailed investigation on her opponent and possessed extremely complete information. Coincidentally, one of them was related to formations. Indeed, that woman had been secretly setting up a formation during this period of silence. From what they knew, the power of the formation was far from reaching its peak. In other words, she was forcefully activating the formation. In the following period, she would only be an immobile target. As long as they could lock onto her position, they could use the power of the Aurora family to kill her and obtain the final victory. Damned human cultivators! How dare you kill a descendant of the Aurora family's bloodline? I'll make you pay a painful price. Elder Aurora, whose entire body was pure white and represented his noble bloodline, roared in anger. His short and laughable body emitted a frightening aura that made one's heart palpitate. But now, other than being angry, he didn't have much of a choice. This was because the Obum race, which relied on their bloodline to strengthen themselves, really didn't have much of an achievement in the path of formations. The angry roar in the hall gradually subsided. In the silence, the atmosphere gradually became a little awkward. Sophia stood up, her expression sorrowful and her eyes dim. "Mr. Aurora can't die in vain. We must find the culprit and let her die in fear and despair and repentance, so as to comfort Mr. Aurora's spirit." She looked around the hall and finally landed on Elder Aurora. "Because of the innate limitations of our race, it's difficult for us to achieve much in the path of formations. But it's not like we don't have a chance to break the formation in Little Fragrant Hill. Elder, we can use the power of the human race itself." Elder Aurora's eyes lit up. "You mean the fallen humans?" This world was divided into two by the back of the Gazing Mountain, each controlled by the Obum and the human race. Since countless years ago, the two races had waged a long and endless war. Throughout this long period of time, there were always some humans who were subdued and eventually willingly became the minions of the Obum race. They were known as the fallen humans, and they had a high status in the Obum race. They were directly governed by the royal family. It could be said that those who could be absorbed by the royal family and become a member of the fallen humans were all human elites with talent in a certain aspect. Therefore, even though their numbers weren't large, the existence of the fallen humans had dealt a heavy blow to the human race in several wars. Elder Aurora fell into deep thought. Although, with the family status, they had the right to borrow the fallen humans controlled by the royal family, they had to pay a price for it. Although Aurora was a direct descendant and had a noble status, there were many others in the Aurora family who were of equal status. Paying too much for a dead descendant was not in line with the beliefs of the family. Sophia's eyes were filled with sorrow. She got up from her seat and knelt on the ground, her voice mournful. I fell in love with Mr. Aurora at first sight, and I've already decided to combine with him and give birth to a bloodline. Now that he's been killed, I'm willing to do everything I can to avenge him. Elder, please help me fulfill my wish. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.